Hello and welcome to those that are here. If there's anybody here yet, I don't know. This is, as always, it's a lastminute.com affair. Just sort of got into the flow and decided, an hour ago that this is what we're going to be doing. So it's lovely to be here. And to those of you that are going to start trickling in, welcome. So we've got our first person in the room already. Big love to you. I think the topic today is going to be a fun one because for me, this is quite close to my heart, right? You know, the ancestors, archetypes, ancient history. When I look at this, I see a singular thread. I don't see separate things personally. And so there we go. That should sort the mic out a little bit better. So I don't see them as being separate. And you'll find that there are very often people discussing it. You'll have your one school of ideas, people that believe it's just metaphysics, it's just philosophy, it's just symbolism. And the others that relate to it as historical events when we talk about the myths. And I think myths are really important. I think the mythology defines us, whether we're aware of it or not. And so many people in this modern day and age have no idea of how defined their modern reality is by ancient myths. They just don't know because they're uninformed, right? They watch Hollywood films that change the way they think, that change their patterns and their behaviors, that change their ideologies, their belief systems, and series and films, books, art. And they fail to recognize that these same stories and narratives that they're seeing in these entertainment pieces of art are exactly what has been packaged and repackaged for thousands of years. So the mythos has always been with us. We've been living in mythology. In fact, one could say that mythology defines us. We are the living embodiment of the myths of ancient times. Why so? Well, it's interesting. Like the people that make these films are artists, and very often they are people that have been touched by mythology, inspired by mythological concepts, by ideals. And so there is no way to just sort of walk beyond it. What is going on here? The star. Namaste. How are you? I couldn't see what was, for some reason, it was hiding this from me. I hope you're well. Hope you're thriving. So, we're going to be having a little bit of a tongue wag about the mythos. Let me know if my audio is okay. It should be 150% okay. It should be even better than okay, to be fair. It should be good. Let me know if there's any issues with it. I don't imagine that there should be. But so I'd love to get your feedback, Star. Tell me how's the audio? Is it good? 9 out of 10. What does that mean, 9 out of 10? Does that mean it's too loud or too soft or too... Okay, good. Thank you. Because I just changed the settings slightly and I might have made it slightly louder. I hope I didn't mess it up. Let me know if it's gone all weird. Okay, because sometimes people on handsets, devices might not get the same. Big love, namaste, Howard. Look at Howard rocking a new profile picture. Go, Howard, go. Woo! I'm always excited when I see people rocking a new profile picture. I'm not one that changes my pictures very often because I'm just not, I don't know. I just take an old picture of myself and stick it up there. That's just what it is. But getting into the fundamentals of I think it's a new picture. Either it's a new picture or my graphic settings have changed. My graphic settings have changed because I found that my machine was crashing because Windows reinstalls the updated drivers for my graphics. And it's caused my system to start crashing. So I had to figure out how to disable Windows from updating my graphics drivers and then install something that would give me the correct graphics drivers. Pain in the butt. Anyway, I managed. So touch wood, system shouldn't be shutting down and crashing because of graphics going honky wonky. But yeah, so, mythology, I think, is such a massive part of our lives. We don't recognize it. We don't realize it. We don't take on board how much mythology has shaped us, even in politics, even in the way that political stories unfold, the narrative, the photo ops, they're all based upon mythological concepts because there's something deeply powerful in the symbolic communications that come from our mythos. It speaks directly to the heart, directly to the unconscious, directly to that part of ourselves which is carrying the ancestral heritage, which is carrying the instincts, and also, reflecting like where we come from, our roots, the proverbial roots of the ancient tree, Yggdrasil. And like, there's probably a good place to start. Why is my voice going all weird? Nothing a fisherman's friend won't help. Fisherman's friend. I am not sponsored by them. But I do dig them. Because they're natural, old-fashioned. Just eucalyptus. And my throat has been a bit strange. Probably because I've been working a lot. And when I work a lot, I talk a lot. So the last few days I've been rather busy. I wasn't going to come on today because I've only had like 4 hours sleep, 4.5 hours sleep last night. I woke up early this morning with a delivery guy. But I thought, what the heck? Why not? So yeah, this mythological landscape that we're living in. And I wanted to talk specifically about many of our ancient stories. And here's Toby One Kenobi. He has come to share his heart of shinobi. Big love, dear blessings, brother. You guys should all know Toby. Those of you in the chat, those of you that are new, his channel's down there. It's in the links. If you're on my channel, if you're on his channel, obviously you know it. Big love to everybody. And he does a lot of decoding, a lot of language work, a lot of looking at the esoteric sort of symbolisms. So this is, something that we're all sort of the wave we're all riding. Big love and welcome, dear brother. And how are you today?
Hey man, good to see you. Sorry I'm a bit late today. But yeah, doing really well. Yeah, all good in the hood. Do you know what? I was gutted to miss the round table on Saturday. I was, especially because of the topic, like the occult power of words, like language and stuff. But I listened to it the other day at work. I listened to you guys talking. Yeah, I was with family and like I checked in for like 5 minutes or so, but I was like, it's a bit rude if I'm listening or going on a podcast if I'm, with my family. So yeah, I did take notes though.
They could always join.
Well, do you know what's funny? Me and my brother-in-law were talking about etymology. And then I was like, I wonder what the topic for today is. So I went on and it was words. So that was very interesting. Yeah, I did take some notes though, which I'll share at some point today. But yeah, man. Yeah, all good in the hood here. How are you doing?
Man, I can't complain. Life is pretty good, pretty beautiful, pretty sweet.
My phone is.
And, everything seems to be serendipitous, falling into place. Life. I've been very busy with work, which is good, because the bicycle. Got to ride that bicycle. I want to ride my bicycle. So yeah, today's topic is pretty cool. It's sort of like a branch out from that topic, isn't it? And like the mythos and the beings and the archetypes and the ancestors. There seems to be this mix-up between all of these concepts amongst many of the TikTokers, YouTubers, because maybe they have read. I always say that like reading stuff for me is a danger unless, and the reason I say that is because most of the people that write about these things are not the people that necessarily know. And I'll explain to you what I mean. In the occult, there are a lot of good writers, and I've read a lot of their work. But what I noticed was that there seemed to be a trend amongst occult writers that that those that wrote were people that read. They were well-read individuals, and they were writing on all the occult therapeutics they had read about. But they didn't seem to be that embedded within the experience of practice. So it's sort of like learning about carpentry by people that read a lot of books about carpentry, but there are no actual carpenters present. And to me, like that hands-on doing is the thing. And when it comes to the hands-on doing thing, that seems to be a deficit. There seems to be some kind of a deficiency amongst many of the people that write. They'll have a small bit of experience, a lot of research, and they'll write about their research, which is great. But they're writing about research that was made by people who wrote about research that was made. And right back to the beginning, it comes back to a researcher. It doesn't come back to an experiential person normally. And that's where the problem, I think, comes in. So, and especially when it comes to these matters, this is what sort of gets on my goat a bit. People want to differentiate and say, no, it's symbolic, or no, it's historical. It actually happened. Or no, it's metaphysical. It's a spiritual field and it's all happening on the spiritual plane. It's not just metaphorical, but it's not, it's not just in your mind. It's actually spiritual beings operating on a spiritual plane. Another group will say, no, it's spiritual beings in your mind. It's just symbolic of principles. Another group would say, no, there were actually physical beings here, and that mythology is about those physical beings that walk the earth. And what I'm thinking is that why does there have to be an either or? Maybe the physical beings that were here are now on a spiritual plane, and they have been mythologized, and they are part of our symbolic infrastructure.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's interesting with the experience opposed to like the written. Is in schools they want children to kind of more like memorize facts and stuff and to write information down, and it's like a copy and paste. Unfortunately, there's not enough process of experience, because that's how we learn, is through experience. And I think this is kind of to do with the knowledge and the intuition as well, because we can gain knowledge, we can copy and paste knowledge, but with intuition, it's learned experience over time. That's the intuition, and we need both. We need to know like the sort of the structure or whatever to write things down, but to know that it's not fixed and it's not stuck, and that your perception and the so-called fact can always change, which is where science has kind of got a bit stuck, I sense. But it's interesting with the Underworld. I was just writing Underworld down, and I forgot to write the L, so I wrote down Underword. And it's like with understanding words, going into words, the depth of words and etymology, and even with the word etymology. So when we last spoke, I think we were talking about food, like food for thought, and the digestion process. The word etymology has eaten, ology. So the word etymology is related to eating, because if you understand etymology and know how to dissect word and understand how the cake is made rather than just eating it, you dissect it and see what makes it up, see what the course was, how it's come to be that cake, how it's come to be that word. You can digest it a lot easier. So I think that the underword, understanding words, relates to the underworld as well, and it's to do with understanding ourselves, the world, the psyche, is going into and learning from the experience of going into, looking into something for yourself, opposed to just copying it off somebody else and pasting it on a book or a Word document or whatever. But I completely agree with the trifold kind of the symbolic, the physical, and the metaphysical. Like the Anunnaki mining gold is a very good example, because there are places in Africa, as you say, where there are sites where there was lots of gold mined. I like to view the gold as our divine spark, our louche, whatever, our essence, which is certainly being extracted still to this day. Like the gold has just changed from physical to metaphysical. And then also the symbolic nature of gold being the sun and wanting to block out the sun. So yeah, everything that is true is trifold, is on all planes. If it's only just on one plane, I'm skeptical. If you can view it as symbolic, physical, and metaphysical, then you know that there's the truth there. There's something to it.
Yeah, exactly. And I find this is often something people want to peg down esoteric and occult knowledge. They want to peg it down. They want to define it. They want it to be clear. Darlene, namaste. And oh, by the way, heads up, big love to all of you, the Star, Howard, Moon, Feather, and Stein, and the Star I mentioned already, and everybody else that's in the space. Big love to you. Big bless. Don't be shy. You can be a part of the chat. It's open space. Everybody can come and share their thoughts and feelings. There's no right answer. There's no wrong answer. There's no right question. There's no wrong question. Just don't say the wrong thing. As long as it's like on topic, you know. Just don't come and advertise or whatever. Like we're selling this new thing. It's really cool. You should check it out. You know. But yeah, you know, I think that is something that I've noticed, especially in the younger community, and it must be part of the way in which the schooling system has become more attuned to specifying multiple choice. I blame multiple choice for a lot of it, in the way that we're brought up in schools and stuff. It's a quick answer. It's definitive. It's yes, it's no, it's right, it's wrong. Instead of it's an essay where there's like nuance to it, and the nuance is off, or the nuance is in, or the nuance. And before, we used to write a long essay, and that was like all of our exams were based on essays. And there was a lot more nuance to it. And the teacher had to assess your nuance very carefully to give you a grade. Now it's definitive. They've made it so that it can be marked by AI or computers. It's A, B, C, D, E, F, G, or H. That's it, or I. It's one of those answers. And it's either right or it's wrong. But in life is never like that, right? Like, things are never really right or wrong. Things are like more right or more wrong, you know? Like, for example, disciplining children. Some people say, oh, it's wrong to discipline children, you know? They must be given an opportunity to grow. Yes, they must be given an opportunity to grow. Totally. They must be free to explore. They must be free to explore. But they also mustn't be free to put their hands into fires or to fall off buildings, right? So that's where the limitations come in. And so how much discipline do children need? And how much freedom do children need to find their self-expression? Too much discipline takes away from self-expression. Too much self-expression equals danger. So there's that fine balance in life that we've got to find. And there's the nuanced sort of serpent path between all these different polarities and extremes. And here is some tissue. It's for wiping your mouth. The amount of shit that comes out of it. Oh, Sean Forder. It's so nice to see someone here with an intelligent comment. Keep up the good work. You might impress one of us. So, yeah, I find it very cute when people are trying to be more clever than what they are. They use big words. You should have added more big words to that, dear Sean. Would have been more impressive. But, the reality is that we are living in a world where there are so many different things available, right? And I always used to say it takes all kinds to make a world. And so we've got all of this variety. We've never before had so much options for what to eat, have we? We used to grow what we grew in our country and we used to eat it. Now it's all just, half the stuff on the shelf comes from other countries, from other seasons. You can eat food all season round, anything you want. It just costs a little more out of season, but it's available. And I think life has become this way because of commerce and the internet and, the freedom of information and such. We're all being exposed to a lot more variety. Yeah, brother, you wanted to say something?
Oh, no, I just wanted to say on the topic of shit that in regards to digesting information, that if you're able to digest the information or the topic at hand in a more coherent way, you shouldn't really need to use toilet roll to wipe your ass. So if you are needing to use toilet roll to wipe your ass, that's not really our problem. Just learn to digest the information better, learn to chew more, and then just really soak it in. And then when you do eventually, when it comes out the other end, you shouldn't really have to use much toilet roll. So
goat pebbles.
What's that?
Goat pebbles. Comes out like goat pebbles because they're quite clean. Have you seen goat pebbles? You haven't seen goat poo? They're like cute little torpedoes, but they're clean.
Like rabbit poo.
Yeah, rabbit poo's quite clean. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. I did hear somebody talking about this yesterday. This was the article was 2 days ago. As parents explode in fury at schools' plan to constantly film their children to train AI. This was May the 18th. So this was a study or something done at Washington University. This study would have taken place had there not been so much backlash from the parents, or the parents were fuming. They were like, no, we do not want our children filmed. So this is the way it's going, is that they want to constantly film and record everything to train this AI. They want to constantly film us, constantly film the world around us to feed this beast that is AI. And it's good to see that there's backlash from parents, because the parents don't want it, so they're not going to be integrating that. Because the AI system that's artificial is very it's very linear, very grid-like. That's why we've been conditioned to only seek knowledge and not integrate it with intuition, because the intuition is the chaos, is the course of which the information is taken to get into matter, into a book. Use intuition to figure out where it's come from, what the source is, what are the waterways, where's it come from. They don't want us using this streams of consciousness to find where things have come from. Where's this AI come from? Where's this information come from? Where are these facts come from? They don't want us really looking at that. They want us just, yes, sir, please, sir, three more, how's the rhyme go? Yes, please, sir, 3 more. You know what I mean? They just want us to basically eat it up, eat their shit, And, Sean, if you do feel like we're talking shit, you don't have to stick around, you don't have to stick around. No one has, we're not forcing anyone to stay here,
It's like I just said, though. Let's keep him around. Every town needs its village idiot. No, look, I'm teasing you, Sean, but like if you make an intelligent comment, I'm sure one of us will respond to it. Like, we just don't have time for idiocy where people say like, oh, this food tastes shite. Okay. Tell me that the food's got too much salt in it, or that there's too much cumin, or that it's overcooked, and that the dairy product in the food doesn't go well with the fruity flavor. The fruit and the dairy are conflicting each other. Make an intelligent comment instead of just saying, oh, it's shit. Because I think our comments that we make says more about us than what it does about what we're saying, just to keep it real. And you're in a space where we are definitely going to keep it real. But hey, you know, one of us is definitely talking something that leaves a bad taste in the lips. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm just eating. Just so I had a call a minute ago, so just having a bite to eat. But yeah, I mean, if people disagree with what we're saying or like how we say it, people in the chat always the chat's always really lively, which is great. That's why these discussions are great. That's why the round table is great, because people can be a part of the conversation. But saying that something is just shit or whatever, like, give it a bit of context, give it a bit of context. Like, why? Have you got a question about what we've said? If you disagree, then say it, Yeah, Stein saying AI psychosis.
People disagree. Sorry, brother.
Stein saying AI psychosis is very real. I've spoken to him a few times about that, and we've spoken about it before. Do you know what? I wish I had this video to share. I need to find it. But who's the guy? Oh my God. Robert Grant. If anyone knows Robert Grant, do you know Robert Grant? Franklin.
Isn't he that actor?
No, he's got a podcast.
Okay.
Let me find it.
I'm sure he's an actor as well.
Yeah, no, it's Robert Edward Grant. It's like he's got a podcast called Think Tank. He's had like Vader Austin on, lots of interesting people. So I saw a video of him on Instagram with Matthias De Stefano, this like guy who's Atlantean or remembers his Atlantean past. So basically, they're all outside. They're in the Merkaba formation, all these people. Robert Edward Grant has his mobile phone, and he's talking to an AI, and it's about mapping the world grid system and stuff. And he's talking to this AI about it, and the AI is saying, oh, basically, you need to do this to map the grid system and bring back the consciousness and all this stuff. And Matthias De Stefano is in the background doing all this stuff, like with his hands. And I'm just like, that's psychosis. You're getting spiritual information from an AI, from a program. Rather, if it was just them saying, yeah, these grid systems, we're connected to source, we're connected to our ancestors, but he's got a mobile phone and he's communicating with this black mirror and how energies in this realm work, and he's talking to a computer. I mean, that's some next level. And he has a huge following too. And I commented on the video. I shared the video. I hope I've downloaded it. My comment was removed. I shared it and it wasn't on my story on Instagram. So something weird happening there.
So you were basically calling Robert out for being
yeah. I just basically said, what the hell is this? That's what my comment was. What is this?
Once there's a lot of money involved, right? Once you got a big following, things change, right? Because you might be paying, like let's say Robert Grant is making 100K a month, right? He might say, you know what? I'm making 100K a month. I'm going to invest 50K a month into a company that will make sure that I'm always seen in a good light. And that 50K a month can then be spent in companies like YouTube and stuff. They come to them and pay them like, we're going to give you this much money to make sure that no one says anything bad about this guy. I'm sure they must have that kind of deals under the covers, under the table, if you got enough money. And YouTube goes, yeah, $500,000 extra per year. The shareholders can do that extra money. We'll do it. And there must be like 100 people. There must be an extra, like, lots of millions of dollars for like CEO bonuses or whatever, in the company, or to improve their AI services. Who knows? So I wouldn't be surprised if that's what's happening. Because I've noticed this in the past as well. If you go after the big guns, and 100K a month is not unrealistic to be making. And if you're making 100K a month, it's worth investing 50K a month into yourself so that next year you're making 200K a month, right? And then invest 100K into yourself so the next year you're making 250K a month. I mean, how do you think Joe Rogan got to be where he is? What does Joe Rogan make per month? Millions? I would say millions, yeah?
Yeah,
it's a crazy thought, isn't it?
A lot of money, yeah.
It's like millions of dollars a month. That guy must be paying $250,000 a month just to keep his reputation clean. Publicists, like celebrities.
Yeah, he said some pretty weird stuff. Like, I think somebody was talking about Palantir and Gaza, and he was like, what are you saying? Palantir has something to do with what's happening in Gaza? Like, he was trying to gaslight this guy. And he was quite young, this guy he was interviewing, and Joe Rogan was just trying to gaslight him. He's clearly been brought out. There was an issue with him a while ago with Spotify, and he almost lost his Spotify contract or something. But I think basically, like everyone, he's been put on a leash. Basically, he can only say certain things, so he shares some information, and then if someone brings up something which is in opposition, he has to lead them astray or whatever. Unfortunately,
looking at what you mentioned, AI, and since we're getting into the story of ancestors, archetypes, ancient history, I think the AI is a big part of that, both metaphysically, both on a mystical and philosophical level, as well as actually was on the earth. And there seems to be evidence to all three aspects. The occult is really where we got our AI code and computer code from, if we're going to be real about this. But looking at this whole thing, like, let's look at what mythology we are doing today, right? So Iran, they bombed two of the AI centers, right? The data processing centers in the UAE, didn't they? Two in the big cities, Dubai and wherever else it was. And then they bombed and there was supposedly Amazon. In other words, Amazon owned these data centers or had somehow become the managers of them. And probably there was a lot of Amazon information being moved along those data centers. But I don't think Amazon needs data centers to run its business. With data centers, this is a lot of information. And so anyway, Iran struck these 3 data centers because they felt that they were military strategic points, because according to the Iranian intelligence, military were riding on these data centers, and they were using these data centers for military purposes, which I can believe under the front of Amazon. Makes perfect sense. And it makes me wonder about, where did Israel get the processing power for lavender to bomb? Do you remember a while ago, Israel took out like 10 or 20 officials, however many it was, of the Iranians, all in one strike, a surgical precise strike using, I think it was a lavender system, one of those systems. And these data centers can be used to power AI that can power like weapons in a way that is a game changer for war. So you can completely understand how Iran felt threatened by these data centers on their doorstep, and they wanted them gone. And bombing data centers is not the same as like in the Iraq war, when the US and England and all the countries that were funding the war allowed America to bomb water distillation plants, baby food manufacturing plants, bridges, infrastructure where food could be imported and sent. So they basically had no clean water. They had no running water for toilet flushing. Dysentery was a huge problem. The children didn't have access to clean water. The babies were basically passing away from dysentery. And that's fine in war. But if you bomb a data center, you get written up as a terrorist in the modern media. And I've seen people I know posting stuff, and I'm like, what do you mean? Oh yeah, but they've got like schools on bases next to the base. I'm like, you find me a single military base anywhere in the world that doesn't have at least 1 or 2 schools on base, plus a school or 2 next door to this, universities. Because the first thing the military does when they get their personnel is they train them. They need schools. Every military base, no, but Iran was specifically putting their military base next to a school. I don't think there are military bases that don't have schools attached to them anywhere in the world. So the propaganda was really being fed to like mindless people that don't actually understand how military bases work. And I knew when I was a kid that military bases had school in them because I knew children who went to schools next to military bases when I was a kid. Come on. That's where I grew up. And I went to a military base where they tested me and they said I could study to become an engineer, an aeronautical engineer when I was 16, if I wanted to. I was like, that's a bit boring. It's not really my thing. I was like, I'll be a fighter pilot, but I won't be an aeronautical engineer. Thanks, but no thanks. But that was just my aptitudes. Like I had a good physics and all of that stuff. And that would have been right there by the base. So, there's a lot of propaganda. And so when we're talking about mythology, right, our mythology has been called propaganda in a sense. So they tell us our mythos isn't real. They tell us our mythology is just fanciful children's stories, right? That it's not our history. Now, the reason I wanted to bring this up is in indigenous cultures, in shamanic cosmology and shamanic philosophy, right? Big love and blessings to all of you that are coming on here. Persipus, how do I say that? How do I say Persipus? Persiperso. Well, Persiperso, big love. Big blessings to all of you. And welcome to those that are joining the group. And I hope you guys are having a good day. But yeah, the way that they tell us that our mythos are not real, and the way they've taken the word myth, I think in indigenous cultures, history is a verbal thing, and we tell our history. So, like you say, Stein, the tech bros are more like tech priests. Exactly, Stein. But for example, Stein is he's a jarl of a community. And I believe that those stories that you've got, the Norse stories, I believe they're true. I believe they actually happened, personally. But I also believe that they're more. I don't think that's the end of the story. I think that what happens in life is we become ideals. When we rise up to a certain level of consciousness, we become more than just who we are. We transcend ourselves and become something macrocosmic, and we start representing an ideal, which is an archetype, which is symbolic, which is a trend within consciousness, but it also becomes embodied on the physical plane. And so they want us to write off all of our ancient history and tell us it's just all mythos. But actually, there seems to be more evidence that the mythologies are connected to points in time. And that makes sense. And here's what gets interesting. They would be cyclical because time isn't linear. Time is a cycle. So the same mythologies would play themselves out again and again and again. This is why we see the mythologies of our modern world playing out the mythologies of the time before. What is the Renaissance? What are we going through now? Would another word for the Renaissance be a, what do they call it? A reset. See? Was the Renaissance just another great reset? Is that what we're doing? And we were told that the Renaissance was like really great and really amazing. Okay, what followed the Renaissance? Well, education. Because of the Renaissance, like all the children got like formally educated. Is that really a good thing? I'm just asking questions. I don't know. What do you think, dear brother?
Well, I think it's been a long, constant process of detaching us from our lineage, which is the earth. Our connection to the earth is our ancestry. The reason for that is because with our ancestors, it's like answers tours. Connection to our ancestors can give us answers to the Torahic field, which is around us, around the earth. Like it's this kind of field. There's multiple layers of these fields, and the connection to ancestors, is answers to the Tor, to the field, and then the archetypes as well are all fragments of this field. I've come to a realization recently, like just the past week, that this realm is an egregore. It's just a thought form. And the reason I think that is because I found out that oath, EOUF, I think, in French means egg, and oath sounds much like earth. So it's like if you want to ask me the shape of this realm, I'll say it's an egg because I see it symbolic, because the egg is the same shape as a seed, and both the seed and the egg contain and help grow life. Like the seed contains everything to become a tree. We are the seeds, and we are the seeds of the world tree, which is the world soul. And then this tree, you can see mycelium, you have actual trees, you have lightning, you have our veins. It's all connected. So I think something has happened. Like we've had a reset of like the Tartarian Empire, which is kind of like a worldwide empire, let's say, connection to the earth and connection to water and connection to fire as well. The reason I say earth and water is because that is more the feminine, which has been suppressed and buried, and the underworld relating to our inner worlds as well as under the earth and possible realms under the earth too. So it's kind of like layered, and that there's been so much done over time. It's like, when was the last reset? It seems like it wasn't so long ago. We've had many, but I think there was one that was not so long ago. And I think that this whole situation in the Middle East, which is very recent, and Iranians remember Tartaria. They remember the Black Dragon. And for me, the Black Dragon symbolizes Tiamat. And Iranians, they have many women scientists who are studying metaphysical phenomenon, whereas in the West, it's mainly men. This AI is a masculine energy because it's mainly analytical, uses the mind, uses knowledge, it's quantitative, it's linear, it's more kind of masculine, opposed to the feminine, more chaos, more intuition, the depth, water kind of thing, right? So for me, there's this constant battle. And of course, the Black Dragon, Tiamat, this kind of, what I view Tiamat as plasma, okay? Plasma, or the field, this black light all around us is this plasma. And I view that as Tiamat, where all things come from. The dark waters, right? Of the name Tia or Tear. Tear is to cry, water coming from your eye, or a tear, like a rip in space-time, where light comes in, light goes out. Yes, dark matter, the dark mother, because she's a black dragon. and they're trying to suppress dark matter, this black dragon. So this is why this issue in Iran is happening. And these nuclear weapons is nuclear relating to nuclear family, this bond, this connection, which was ripped apart in the 50s when we had the atomic bomb. And I think that nuclear is much more about power. It's more about energy and connection, or solar energy. And it's about disconnecting us from the sun, from the solar energy, this sun within us also as well. So this is all, nothing is what it seems on the surface. So I think that we had World War One, World War Two, the demolition of all of the old world buildings, cathedrals, detuning of the church bells and stuff. This is all very, very recent. This would be our parents or our grandparents. This I don't know what to call it. Like a war doesn't seem right, but because it seems that most people don't realize that it is a war. It's not a battle. It's something being done to people and they don't even know it. That it's a very recent thing. Like we're in the midst of a great reset now, and won't be able to do it today, but like perhaps next week, I'd love to talk about the fall of Sophia, because I think this relates to this reset. And also I think it relates to the Younger Dryas and the Great Flood as well, because it seems that Sophia was buried for like 11,000 years. The Younger Dryas was 11 or 12,000 years ago, but there's been 1,000 years added to our timeline. So I think that fall happened during the flood. And I think that very, very recently, perhaps in the millennium reign of Christ, like the year zero, whatever, Sophia emerged then at this kind of energy, this Christ consciousness, and it's being suppressed. And right now we can sense it being suppressed because this emergence of this AI wouldn't be able to come into being if we had our spark, which is our frequency. So it's quite I went a little bit off topic there, but yeah, just in a future conversation, we need to have the chat, hopefully maybe India as well, like whoever else, but about the never-ending story, how it ties into the fall of Sophia, and what is that? Is that like our spark, inner, outer worlds? And that's going to be like probably a 3-hour conversation, so we can't do it now, but yeah, man, I think this is also layered, and it's important to talk about the different layers. Yeah.
It's on the schedule. I'm going to find a copy of the never-ending story. You're going to sit down with your kids. I'm going to sit down with my boy. We're all going to sit down with the kids. We're going to enjoy the never-ending story. I'm going to say to my son, hey, that was good. You want to watch it again? Dad, why are you taking notes? Never mind, my boy. But Dad, are you supposed to aren't you supposed to enjoy the film? I am enjoying it, my boy. Anyway, that's something that's been on my mind. Never-ending story is one of them. And Labyrinth. There's a couple of them, but Never-ending story is like right up there. Now, you were, just before you got onto that topic, which I think is very like something we're going to do for sure, you were talking about the buildings, right, and the heritage. And I think this taps right back to the ancestral archetypes that are in stone. So our ancestral archetypes are around us. Now, you just, it was so beautifully put, right? Let me just put this up here for us so we can take a look. Let the world see what we're talking about, right? So these buildings, right? Guess where this is? This is Ukraine. How's that? Ukraine. Now, this might not look impressive until if you get closer to this building and you look at just exactly what we're looking at here, right? The design of this building. If you take a look at it, it's definitely, it's an old building. It's got some beautiful. Look at this. This is Ukraine. No, sorry, that was Ukraine. There we go. More pictures of Ukraine. Can you believe it? So why are they demolishing Ukraine? It's like Russia and the US and everybody, they're in on it. All the governments, they're in on it. They're all part of the same thing. Let's not forget the Bolshevik Revolution was not a revolution. It was a takeover. It was a Zionist takeover of Russia and Eastern Europe. And they formed the USSR. They standardized everything within that area. And then they brought all the power back to Russia. It split up and Russia dominated the region. And this is what we're seeing today. So Russia today is not Russia before USSR. It's Russia post-USSR. And Russia and all the Eastern European states have basically been controlled by Zionists. And we think Zionism is Israel. No, mate. Israel is just the face of Zionism. Zionism is big. It's global. It's an organization. It's a political infrastructure. So there we can see, you ask me why they're bombing, why there's a war in Ukraine, because there's too much history there. And if people were to start seeing the history and talking to the local people, this is where it comes into play. I believe Ukraine was a center of Tartaria. What do you think? Does this picture speak about? Does it speak about a center? Right? Does this look like a third world country? Or does this look like the center of a massive empire? Ukraine. Very interesting. So, and now let's take this into a more modern, into the more recent. What's happening this year, right? So, of course, this is naturally Iran. Oh, Iran. Iran's pretty. Look at that. Might not look that impressive until you get close to the wall and you notice that those tiles, that's not a painting. I want us to understand that that's been built in that fashion. This might not look that impressive, but look at the way they've done the doorways. And is anybody noticing that those were like big doorways? They've obviously changed stuff in the times there. And there you can get another perspective of some of these. Look, it's built with stone. These are built with stone. These are very, very, very beautifully. Yes, some more beautiful architecture in Iran, right? Like, just look at this. And so, what is the goal here? What is the goal here in Iran? To me, it seems like there's definitely some kind of a ploy here to remove all of our knowledge of our ancient heritage and our true ancestral lineage. And they want us to be separate. Iran is separate. No, Iran and Ukraine are connected to the rest of the world by a singular empire or a singular culture that we all emitted from. And now they've tried to create separation between us. They want to separate the races. Like, they want us to be against each other, right? This is what they do. They go and start a war in one country where white-skinned people are given guns and told to go and shoot brown-skinned people. The brown-skinned people, all they know is that those white-skinned people are shooting at us. That's all they know. Like, you're a kid and you grow up and you're like, oh, my mommy and my daddy was shot by those white-skinned people with guns. They don't understand that the white-skinned people are shooting at the brown-skinned people because they were told by their white-skinned slavers that the brown-skinned people are coming to get you in your country. You got to shoot them before they shoot you. So they're playing this game with us. And a lot of it seems to be destroying. Do you remember Iraq? There were a lot of news reports about how the military was setting up bases on top of ancient Sumerian digging sites, and that they destroyed all the tablets when they set up their base with their tanks and stuff. So they basically took out all the Sumerian tablets, put them on the ground, left, and then the bases came there, rode over it, got digging tools and dug in to put themselves bunkers where the Sumerian heritage or sites were. Like, you can't make this up. They could have gone like 500 yards over there. No. We need to be here. Why not 1,000 yards over there? Does it make such a big difference for your base? No, we want it to be here. I mean, we are talking about a flat country mostly, or a lot of it's flat. There's enough flat area to make a base over here or over there. So you gotta imagine what's going on here. And it's like they want us to be living disassociated. They don't want us to know that our mythos is our history, but that we are part of a consciousness field that is manifesting time in a non-linear way, cyclically, and we are experiencing it in a linear fashion because our brains have been condensed into a linear framework of thinking. And so we think of time as this linear thing, and we get stuck in that loop of time, looking at the small little patches, not realizing that it's like if you were to walk in a circle, that's a good way of looking at it. If you're walking in a circle and the radius of the circle is 5 miles, right? You might seem like you're walking in a straight line. Does that make sense? Or if it's a big circle, like a 20-mile radius circle or like a diameter, it might seem like that is almost a straight line, but you would end up back where you started. You wouldn't even notice. And time is a bit like that. It seems like it's a linear thing, but when you really step back and look at it, it's a much broader loop. And when we start to recognize this, we start realizing, hold on, so what is consciousness? And what are these ancestral connections we have? What is all this junk DNA they filled our brain with, telling us it's all junk DNA, right? When it's not junk DNA. Oh yeah, of course, that's what the body does. It manufactures junk, doesn't it? Hey, Toby, isn't that what the body does?
Yeah, man. I need to shoot off in a second, like now. But if you're still around on this live in like an hour or so, I'll jump back on. So yeah, it's a very, very short one today, just under an hour. It's tricky because these kind of conversations need to be more like, well, we usually talk for like 6 hours. So yeah, well, I'll just finish off with that. In school, for example, kids GCSE level are taught that the heart is a pump. I brought this up because one of my clients, their granddaughter is doing GCSE, and I looked at her work and I said to her grandmother, I was like, oh, you do know that the heart isn't a pump, it's a vortex. Do you know if they know this? And she was like, oh no, it's only GCSE. What? It's only GCSE. They think that because it's GCSE, they don't need to know that it's a vortex. That, like, for example, you can only learn the truth when you're older. It's like, hey, you should be teaching kids, should know, little children should know that the heart is a vortex and that we have a field around us. You know, we're not a closed, isolated system, just like a machine. But that's what kids are taught. And of course, the vortex is a spiral, as is the DNA, as is consciousness, it's a spiral, because you have a conch shell, which is a spiral. It's like the phi golden ratio. The phi is the fire, which is the DNA, which is the spiral, which is this vortexing. And this fire, this vortex is what energizes us. And we don't get our energy from in here. I think we get our energy from out there, from the ether. And, you know, that's how people can become breatharians. But we can consume so much shit, so much junk, talking about DNA, junk information, junk food. You know, it's this kind of like plastic sort of, the plasticity, this kind of plastic stuff that we're given. And really, like, we're so much more, there's so much more to us than that. There's so much more to this realm and how we are all entwined in time. Like, time is a thread which connects us all, and it doesn't bind us, but we can weave these threads, which I say are like the norns, the past, present, and future, are the roots of Yggdrasil, the world tree from which we all come from. And that we can kind of tune into this. And what's helped me is words, kind of connecting to these kind of broader concepts like Sophia, or like the eighth sphere being eight Sophia. It sounds the same. That's because it is the eighth sphere, the realm shells hollowing us out. It's happening now. People are being hollowed out to make way for something else. Or is it just extraction? Who knows? But that's what it is. It's the eating of Sophia, and it's the burying of Sophia, and that's the fall of Sophia. It's the eighth sphere. So that's what's helped me understand these broader concepts. Is like with etymology, splitting the word, playing around with it, I can understand like what the meaning is without knowing what the meaning is. Like you can understand things instantly. Like I still don't really know what the eighth sphere is, and I haven't looked into it. All I know is that it's the eating of Sophia, and that's good enough for me. I know that's happening now. I don't need to look into that. I can't look into everything. I just look into a little bit of things, tie the thread, find the essence, the common, and I do that with people. Like we're all one humanity, and we've all been separated with borders, this and that, and destruction, and yeah, brown people versus white people, like men against women, this against that, and we just all need to remember that we are all human, and that there is an energy which is unhuman, which is in this realm right now, which doesn't belong here, which seeks to separate us all. So I'm gonna have to shoot off. But if you're still here in a little while, I'll jump back on. I'll be on my phone at work. But yeah, man. Next Tuesday, Wednesday morning, perhaps we'll do the Never-Ending Story / Fall of Sophia. And by the fall of Sophia, how do we release that which is bound, that which has been suppressed? How do we tap into that which has been forgotten, our ancient wisdom, and then when we tap into that, that's how we're able to find the common thread, the common unity of humanity and all of us together. So yeah, I'm going to jump off now, but it's great talking to you as always, Franklin, and everyone in the chat. Hope everyone has a good day, and hopefully I'll see you later.
Dear brother, it's always an honor chatting to you as well. And yeah, maybe I'll still be here. Who knows? Don't know how long, but we'll see. There's a couple of threads I want to pull at. But brother, see you later regardless. Om Shanti. And as always, it's an honor. We love you, Toby.
Much love.
Be back soon.
Bye.
Om Shanti. He's putting a lot of really good bits of information onto the space here, and I think it's really important for us to pay attention to these things, because there's a lot here for us to unpack. Speaking of unpacking, I thought it'd be a good thing to take a look at the word ancestor, because it's obviously it's a good word. Now we're going to be told it comes from Latin. Right? Latin was a language that was created to confound us. We got to understand what the ancient Greeks were on about, how they were operating, what their mission was, their mission statement. And that'll give us more of an insight into just exactly what is going on here. So when we look at this, we see traces of the pi root, not the word, but traces of ant, meaning anterior, right? Meaning the front, meaning the forehead. From that came words like front. Then the Latin sedere, which comes from the pi root of kid. Okay, so if we look at the ante and the kid, and we put the ante and the kid together, we could get together with a word like anchor. Anchor. Now, we think of it as ank, but it's actually anka. It's almost a silent D in there. And what I'm talking about, to be clear, right, is the ankh that we all love so much. That beautiful symbol, right? And the anchor, here we go. There's just a very plain version of it. You could see as being connected to these words. Then we have another added element, right? And the caduceus. How does the caduceus relate to this? The S, the anchor S, anchus, the hissing of the snake. Think onomatopoeia and think of the S as it symbolizes that connection between polarities and the ascent of potential for the human awareness to understand the transcendent potential from whence we have arrived to become physical beings. So the S represents that wisdom. And we see the S in the beautiful image that we've got up here. And obviously this is Hermes' staff, central to Hermetics, but it's fundamental. We see the same thing in every culture all around the world. And obviously the caduceus, Greece, everywhere else, ancient Egypt. The Jews. In India, the staff and the serpent, fundamental. The kundalini, we have the same cycle of these serpents moving up the spine. So this represents the spine, represents the two petals, the two potentials that are aligning the Ida and the Pingala, or the astral and the etheric. And it's the astral and the etheric serpents that are wound up in this dance that produce physical reality. So the S is quite important. So when we add the Ankh S, now what do we see above this? You see something above that? What is this winged orb? It's an orb that's up in the sky that flies above our heads. We call them heavenly bodies. Star is another word for it. Ankh es star. Ankh es star. And then, of course, that was changed in Latin to become anse. Anse. Because the K, as we saw, when it goes back to its roots, became sidera or kidera. I don't know how you pronounce it in Latin. I never studied Latin. But it does come from kid. And is not by accident we call a baby goat a kid. So just bear all of these things. Keep it in on your back burner. And so we've got an Ankh es star. So it was believed in ancient times that when we left this world, if we had lived a decent and reasonable life, we would go up and become a star, right? And so in ancient times, our ancestors used to look up at the stars and imagine that to be the light of those that came before them, right? And that our ancestors were up above our heads, looking down over us, guiding us. And so astrotheology came into being because we then wanted to study the patterns of our ancestors in the stars and the heavens. So astrotheology has got a root in ancestral worship. People don't always realize this. From a shamanic perspective, this is sort of well known. And it's part of ancient shamanic cultures and knowledge from indigenous people have kept this knowledge alive. And to this day, there are many indigenous tribes in Australia, America, South America, South Africa, all around the world that believe that their ancestors are in the stars and that the stars we're looking at are actually the light of their ancestors. And if you did great deeds in life, you would become a bright star and you would get a name and you would be remembered for all time. And you would then guide those that followed. Can you see the shamanic connection? So from a shamanic perspective, we go into a trance, we connect with our guides, and our guides reveal to us the way towards our ancestors. Our ancestors then join us, work with us, advise us, direct us, sometimes work through us. And this is how shamanic work is done. All that nonsense about substances, that's later divisions, that's later developments of shamanism. Imagine for a moment a master of martial arts, and he's living in Japan, and there's lots of masters of martial arts of that particular school. And that one master went off to another land, and he taught a student who was a pretty good master. And that student who taught other students, and they weren't quite as good as him. They didn't reach the level of master, but they were highly proficient teachers. So they weren't masters, but they were high-level sensei. And those high-level sensei, they're not able to teach as well as their masters taught students, and they became less high-level sensei because they didn't have the same experience and the same experience to tap from their teachers as what their masters before them did. And then at some point, they were no longer able to even train people up to the level of sensei. They were only able to train people up to the level of senpai. That just means senior grade, not really effectively a teacher. And so then the senpai became the holders of that martial arts tradition in another country, right? So shamanism started in the Himalayas. It's still alive. It's still rocking. But it did migrate around the world. We do see the migration trails. It did migrate into Russia. It did migrate everywhere. And probably it was also in the South Americas, but in ancient times. And now we've got these more modern forms of shamanism in different places. But in the same way, they weren't the masters and they weren't the teachers. They were just the seniors. And because they were the seniors, they weren't able to do the shamanic work without using substances. So they had to learn to rely on substances because the master before realized, well, you're not quite a master, but you're good. You're a teacher. So I'm going to teach you about substances because my wisdom shows me that you won't be able to teach people past your level. And if it drops below your level, they will need substances to be able to do the work that I used to do without substances, that my master never used substances to attain. So this is why in many forms of shamanism, substances are used, right? These are lower grade forms of shamanism because they are just the little bit of the heritage that is being kept alive in that little place by the string of its own teeth. But the real body of shamanism is in the Himalayas, where they don't need or use substances because it's not necessary, because there's such a big community that are involved and embedded within the shamanism that they are able to find naturally gifted people. Not anyone becomes a shaman. You've got to have had extreme trauma, a near-death experience. You probably crossed over. You probably had some extremely dangerous trauma. You probably were close to not being alive numerous times in your life. And that's what tempered you to become a shaman. Because of that, you had experiences of ESP that you were able to fall into easily, and that drove you towards shamanism. But if there weren't people like this, then they would take the next best in the village. And if there weren't people, the next best, they would take the next best after that. And those next best after the next best would possibly need substances in order to gain some kind of an experience of that experience that would have become the real shaman. And so this is food for thought for you to understand. And now why they have taken these lower grade shamans and turned that into shamanism. And why the anthropologists within the last century try to say that there's no connection with the word shaman from the Vedas when there blatantly is. It goes back 3,800 years in some of the very, very oldest Vedas. And these were important players within the Vedas. This is where Ayurveda came from, for example, from shamanism. So it's really important to recognize this, and that this ancestral connection is a universal connection that goes right back to the beginning, after the flood. After the flood, people settled where the land was high. They settled in the Indus Valley was where people survived, because it was a valley that's 4,000 meters high. And the flood hadn't decimated that area yet. It had reached that area, but it had settled really fast. That's why we've got all the Himalayan black rock salt up there in that area. That's the north of Kashmir. Anybody want to go and see a really funky place? Go to that place. Go to Ladakh. There's a reason why Emmanuel, who they called Jesus, went to settle there. That's why they have his grave there. That's why they have information about his journey through Afghanistan, where his mother passed away. Was it Afghan or Pakistan? No, it's Afghanistan, where they have the grave of Mary, his mom, because she didn't make it with him to Kashmir. So, these are historical facts, right? They have the histories. They have the the specific tombs. What are you doing? What are you doing? Eh? You come up here and then you want to go down, and you want to. My little Agathan is being really fussy. Yes, Teddy's a little boy. And wanting my attention as well, biting me to get attention. But yeah, so when we start to look at this connection, and we start going, well, what is Christ? Okay, is it Christ consciousness, or was there actually a human being? Well, there was actually a human being that was able to embody that consciousness, which is an ancient consciousness, which has been embodied in ancient times, and psychically, in terms of with every cycle, gets embodied once again within the flesh. This is what the Vedas teach, the avatar of Vishnu, Krishna, right? So these ancient embodiments of this high level of consciousness is what we call the Christos by the Greeks, was what we call Christ. And so this is just one example of where they have taken a mythos, which is something which is occult and esoteric and of extra-dimensional value, and put it into a physical context and locked it in and put all the other things out and said it's not symbolic, it's an actual being. Well, yes, it is an actual being, but actually, yes, it is symbolic. And actually, yes, it is part of an occult framework of time and the way the universe works. In other words, it's extra-dimensional. It's the spiritual essence of consciousness at its highest level of evolution being tapped into by any particular individual that has the capacity to do so. And so we can see the same trend with shamanism. This is why I point out the word ancestor, right? The ancestor and its connection with the Ankh, right? Which, as we see with the Indo-European language groups, is a K, not a C. That was Latinized. And then we add the S, the serpent, right? The S, the Ankh S, and the star, which we know is essentially the embodiment of ancestors in the heavens. So you can see how there has been so much hidden from us and taken away from our language, taken away from us on many, many levels. And these esoteric revelations are not available to the masses at the moment. And yes, I do believe it is a threefold system. And the threefold system is particularly interesting because when we look at Dreamtime, what is Dreamtime? Well, Dreamtime is Maya, right? I spoke about the mysteries of Maya before here, that it is two bij mantram syllables connected. Ma, that's the element of water, the vibrational field of which relates to the holding of information, right? Memory, mama, mother, the womb of creation. And Maya, what is Ya? Ya is the syllable which is the control for Akasha. So if you want to learn to control the Siddhi, those are the spiritual forces and spiritual powers inherent within this element of space, what they call the Akasha, the black egg, the cosmic egg. And those are all the psychic tens, the psychic forces, psychicism. The Siddhi live within this. This is why if you look at a picture of Shiva, let me pull one up. Let me pull up a picture of Shiva, because Shiva is beautiful to look at. We should all look at pictures of Shiva, because there's something very special about Shiva. Let's hope this image is good. That's a very bad image. That image is terrible. We cannot look at such a disgusting image on this podcast. I refuse to allow such an image to be shown on a podcast like this. So there we go. There's your classic sort of modernized image of Shiva that you can see, right? And you can see the serpent wrapped around the neck, right? And that serpent wrapped around the neck is quite relevant, quite important, because it represents something very particular. And it represents the Kundalini arising. And this arisen Kundalini has a better image. And the reason I'm showing you this image is because it's better. That's the only reason I'm going to show you this image. So what are we noticing here? We're noticing the Kundalini energy, right? We're noticing it focused around the Visuddhi chakra, the throat center, which is the Ya, Maya. We notice in his right hand he's holding the Trisul. That represents the three principles. And that's why if you look at the top header, this is the threefold dream time. So Shiva is able to control the elements of threefold dream time because his vital energies have been purified to the degree that he has gained control over the siddhi, the spiritual powers inherent within the psyche, right? The soul powers, if you will. And on his left side, there is next to him the Shiva Lingam. That is the seventh principle of Hermes, by the way, in case you weren't following. The seventh principle of Hermes is the principle of masculine and feminine coming together, and that is a lingam yoni. The yoni is around the outside, and the lingam is inside the yoni. That means that the proverbial Kataic implement is containing within it the phallic instrument, and the phallic instrument is able to play its proverbial song through the halls of the Kataic implement, right? Kataic meaning vagina, phallus meaning penis, naturally. So these symbols are really powerful, and you can see why Shiva holds such an allure for anybody that's interested or invested into the occult sciences. Look upon his head, he has the new moon, right? The new moon represents that new potential of rebirth. So he sits within the cycle of rebirth, and he's constantly in a state of transcending being alive and being born into life all at once. And you see all the rudraksha and the malas that he's wearing around his chest. They all are stemming from the powers that he has gained from Visuddhi, with the life forces, the serpent having been purified to the degree that it is focused in his Visuddhi chakra. So that is Ya. Notice if you look here, you'll see around his Svadhisthana, what has he got there? You see, he's got a belt there with a tiger skin. And that tiger skin is held there by the belt. That is the Ma. That is the sacred feminine. That sacred feminine holds things together. It holds his animal skin on his body. It keeps him connected to the flesh. And the Ya is the consciousness being embedded within the flesh. And you see the same idea here with the lingam yoni on his left hand side. So you can see all the symbolism here is speaking very loudly and very particularly when we look at Shiva. And there's no accident. So to understand these sacred and profound mysteries is to delve deep into the heart of understanding the supernatural potentials of the Holy Spirit. And the Trisul, getting back to the threefold dream time on his right hand, and I should possibly pull up another image to demonstrate this because I can. That's why I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it because I can do it. If we then look at Ida Pingala Kundalini, That's always a good idea. So here's a pretty little picture. Is this pretty picture going to rock our world? I hope so. Yep, that'll do. So here we have the impression of Ida Pingala. And you notice down the center, here's your caduceus, right? In India, which is ancestral, what we're talking about. You'll notice that these two principles represented as the Ida Nadi, which is what you see above Shiva's head, which means that he is involved with bringing in these astral dream knowledge. And the Pingala Nadi, which is the etheric, the solar electrical expression. So the magnetic and the electrical come together in the electromagnetic field, which is revolving around a central proverbial pillar, the middle pillar in Western occultism, or the axis mundi, or the Shashumna Nadi, if you're in India. And the Shashumna Nadi represents the highest aspect of the soul's potential in the physical. So when you reach a highly refined level of esoteric yogic training, we're not talking hatha, we're talking real yoga, esoteric yoga, that learning to stretch it's good. Don't get me wrong, I'm not knocking hatha. You must learn to stretch. But it's like, I'll give you an analogy. In martial arts, before you can learn martial arts, you've got to learn how to stand, postures. Then you've got to learn to move in those postures. And then you've got to learn to apply blocks from and through those postures, and then strikes, and then kicks, and then to put them together in combinations. Right. Hatha yoga is learning how to stand, learning your stances. It's a prerequisite towards martial arts, but it isn't martial arts. It's part of martial arts, but it's only just the first step. So the Hatha yoga teachers can't really teach you yoga, unfortunately, because they're not yogis. But they have taken the first step towards the second step, which will take them to the third step so that they can actually start learning yoga. So they're on the way to becoming an apprentice, or they're on the way to be. The yoga teachers today that teach yoga is on the way to becoming a beginner. They just need to do a couple of steps before they become beginners. That's the reality of yoga. This is how in depth it goes. And understanding these esoteric and occult principles is the jnana behind the fundaments of yoga, behind the fundaments I mean, a soccer mom in yoga pants is pretty divine. Yeah, I was talking to my girlfriend about yoga pants the other day. And she sent me this really cool little track. Stein, I'm going to send it to you after this. In fact, I'll post it on my channel. I'll post it in my Bush Whisper channel. You guys can go and see it. It's really funny. It's a guy singing about yoga pants that will make you laugh your pants off. But yeah, totally Stein, you know. There's nothing not divine about that. Yeah, the North Pole on the planet, exactly. You know, the Shushumna is our inner North Pole. And, you know, this is the outer and the inner shell, you could say. So these three principles represent three fundamental states: the astral state, the etheric state, and then that which is the Shashumna. Now the Shashumna is the combined potential in a singularity of the two poles of left and right. So you could say that the Shashumna becomes divided, and in its division, one becomes Ida and one becomes Pingala, and that the Pingala is embedded within the Ida, and that the Ida surrounds the Pingala in the way that the feminine surrounds the masculine, and that the masculine operates within the feminine. As we make babies in such a way, it seems like as above, so below is appropriate. So to understand these three fundamental states is to understand what the etheric plane is, what the astral plane is, and what the causal plane is. And then we look at these three and we now apply it to shamanic cosmology, and we're talking about dream time. So we talk about fundamental dream time we're experiencing here. And that fundamental dream time consists of three forms of dream time. And those three forms of dream time is the underworld, where it's its own realm of dream time. And we have the supernal, divine plane, its own realm of dream time. And then we have what in shamanic cosmology is called the middle plane, which is that plane of dream time that interacts between the two polarities, right? And just to bring this back to the image on the board, right? The divine, if you imagine it up above, descends down the Ida Nadi. And it descends down the Ida Nadi and it ascends back up along the Pingala Nadi towards the unity of divine Sasra Chakra above the head. So you can see how this is quite relevant, right? How the balance of these elements come into fundamental states, and how we can recognize the threefold nature of dream time, and that dream time is really a combination of this fundamental spiritual dream time, the highest archetypal state, and the descending currents of the astral and the ascending currents of the etheric, and how these come together in a state of harmony. And then we see it gets very interesting, because the middle plane then represents the Ida Nadi, represents the astral, represents that which is the sphere of dreams, that is the actual energy that embodies the etheric plane. Hence, from a shamanic perspective, most of the work is done in the astral, because it's where we are able to externalize our emotional energy potential as energy to embody certain qualities into physical structures. And by changing those qualities embodied within... Okay. What's going on? What's going on, my darling? Don't go falling off there. Shoo. So, you're right. Is it because the dog came down here? You should know better than to be scared of him. He's not going to hurt you. Anyway, so yeah, when you start to look at these mysteries, you see that the fundamental Trimurti, the fundamental state, which is once again represented here, right? No, not the best image. Sorry, share this image instead. That fundamental image that's represented here, and what I was talking about, that Trishul, this Trishul here, that represents these three planes, these three states. And the alchemists were talking about these three states. That's why alchemy has those three states as well. So these are universal truths. But the other element of these three principles and these three states that relate to the cosmologies of understanding how the actual physical giants literally walked the earth. The actual gods from the Norse tradition actually walked the earth. Something to think about. But they are not of the earth. Right. Here's where it gets interesting. They are from parallel dimensional time zones. They're not from this physical emanation, but they were able to take form here. So the Greeks would say they came from Olympus, right? But the Norse traditions will say that there's Yggdrasil, which has the different layers within the tree where the different beings have their own abodes, but that they can come here. And exactly, Odin the Wanderer, wandering through time and space, through different universes and worlds. And this is just one of the worlds that these beings came to. And it's the same story in the Vedas, Stein. Same story. These divas and shuras, they were travelers through different, wandering around through different systems. So these principles then within that Trishul is telling us that there's a threefold nature to all things. That's why the tree is what we we adhere to as a symbol. It is a symbolic, it's very symbolic. It is a metaphor, but it's also literally the access mundi as well. It's a literal point in time space on the planet. It's a literal point in time space within your spine, within your body. And it's also a historical relevance, as well as being a mythos. So when we start recognizing that these three elements are present in all stories, yeah, exactly. The temple in the forest. That's, you couldn't put it better. You know, what does the forest represent? It represents the sphere of life, and that in the center of the sphere of life, that's where you're going to find this totem pole, we call them in shamanism, right? That's a word that comes from the Americas, which is the maypole that they dance around in the 1st of May, as they did in Europe and UK just a few weeks ago, right? The first day of summer, which funnily enough here in South Africa is the first day of winter, which is interesting. Like we're on the inverse scale of things here in the Southern Hemisphere. But it's just like food for thought for people to recognize and realize that there is truly and genuinely a threefold nature to reality. And we think of it as just being this, but we are literally. Are you angry? Why are you biting me? Why are you so angry? Hey? Who are you angry with? You angry with me? This little guy's having an angry moment. Like a kid. Say he's just like a little child. He's losing his temper on the back of my head because he's not. Oh, that was mean. That was mean. That I'm sorry, but that was mean. No, you go and sit on the chair if you're going to behave like that. So this threefold nature of things is fundamental to the structure of life, and to the structure of consciousness, and to the structure of physicality. And so everything is a myth. And here's where it gets really interesting. This is really the point and the crux, proverbial crux, once again, the cross at the center of the access mundi. The point you must cross, the horizon, right? That's Horus, the son of Horus. You must cross the horizon. And that is the point of zero potential. In terms of the enneagram, the horizon would be the sun of Horus, right? And it's that fundamental epicenter from whence all the light is emerging. It's a point of darkness. So it's like very interesting when we start to consider these polarities, how they express themselves in the yang and the yin, in the Taoist alchemy, where the point of darkness is where the light arises from, and the point of light is where the darkness arises from. So we see this perfect synergy of harmony and balance of Ida and Pingala embedded within each other. And that this represents the Tao, or the Tao could be another representation for the causal field, the causal plane, which is essentially the fundamental state of being, the soul body, the spiritual body, the seat of the soul, if you will. So when we compound all of these, exactly, it's sort of like it's like what we would imagine to be a black hole. I think it's what it is. It's an event horizon, effectively, and time stops, gravity stops, because there's no time, there's no gravity within the point, and so this causes us to really ask questions about the nature of time. So from a shamanic perspective, we can interact with our future selves, and we can interact with our past selves. We can literally interact with our ancestors, and we can change them in the same way that our future selves can change us in the present. We can change our future selves. It's quite a head trip to understand the cyclical nature of time, but it's very much a part of African indigenous culture to think in such a way. But we've been taught not to think in such a way, because we're living in this sort of, materialist society, materialist philosophy and way of life. You'd say that time-wise, that would be the closest you can come to the absolute. Yeah, I would imagine. Yeah, it seems to me. like the point of rest within the storm of life, and the center of the atom. Yeah. And so it's at the atom. It's got to do with life, and being in a tomb is where you go when you're not alive. So it's a point between life and not alive, right? We're going back to the idea of Shiva, right? Shiva represents both being alive and not being alive, transcending the life of living and not. So we're talking about perennialism as well. We're talking about eternal life. We're talking about the potentials reflected outwards and taught by Christos, because the universal truth is singular. The singular universal truth can be expressed in three different ways. And each of those three ways holds that the singular truth is threefold in nature. And so we got the threefold three. And this is where we come across, little ideas like, for example, the Enneagram. Yeah. Something that a lot of people don't really fully appreciate, just the nature of time and space, and just exactly where we are. And here I've built a Enneagram for you guys, but this is what I call the real Enneagram, because it's based upon real numerology. It's not foo-foo nonsense like they built in the 60s, right? In the 60s, they built foo-foo nonsense, which is based upon psychologists who just decided randomly to try and put their limited esoteric occult knowledge into recognizing numbers and their potentials and into the shape. But this is like the mystical Enneagram knowledge that we can see, like the Chaldeans had a lot of this knowledge, and the Sufis and various different traditions. Obviously, it's how a sidereal astrological chart is also drawn. So when we break this down, we can see here as a threefold three path, right? The threefold three. And there's two Enneagrams here, by the way, for those of you that can't see it, right? There's a masculine and a feminine Enneagram. So there's the blue Enneagram and there's the yellow Enneagram. Those are the two Enneagrams here. The green is not a true Enneagram. Just like that other funny symbol that you see is not a true Enneagram, right? That thing that everybody calls an Enneagram, it's not actually an Enneagram. The same way that the green is not actually an Enneagram. Yes, it's three triangles superimposed over each other to look like an Enneagram, in the same way that other symbol is. But an Enneagram, like a pentagram, you got to put your finger on a point and you got to draw 9 different lines, right? So you basically have to put your finger on a point and draw 9 different lines. And when you draw these lines, they've got to make up an Enneagram shape. And the 9th line has got to end at the point that you started the first line on. It represents continuity and perennialism, what we're talking about. If these principles are not represented, it's a dead shape, not a living shape. For it to be a living shape, it has to be imbued with the sacred. And to be imbued with the sacred, it has to be organic and moving. So you start on one point, you end on that point, you draw 9 lines, and all 9 lines, the lengths are exactly the same. And if you draw it in such a way that the first point and the 9th point are on the same point, you have drawn an Enneagram, because there's only one way to do it. The green is not such an item. The green is what it is it's, I don't know if you can see it here, but if you go from 6 to 9 to 3, that's one triangle. 6, 9, 3. 3, 6, 9. Isn't that cute? But when you add up 3, 6, 9, you end up with 3 plus 6, which is 9, plus 9, which is 18, which is 9. The other green triangle is 1, 4, 7. And if you add up 1 plus 7, which is 8 plus 4, it's 12, which adds up to 3. So we've got 9 and we've got 3. If we look at the next triangle, the next triangle is 2, 5, and 8. If we add up 2 plus 5, it makes 10, plus 5 makes 15, which is 6. So here you have the 3, 6, 9 triangle, and then you have, which adds up to 9, and then you have the other 2 triangles that add up to 6 and 3. So you've got 3, 6, 9, and then you've got 3, 6, 9 again in that other symbol that I've constructed within the 2 enneagrams. Then you've got the masculine flow of enneagram and the feminine flow of enneagram within this, that which receives and that which gives. And so these represent the influences between the numerations, the 9 states of being, the 9 different spheres of activity, the 9 worlds, if you will. So there's a lot here for people to understand just exactly how this operates. And that's why I've put a few of the planets around here so people can see that it relates to Vedic cosmology and Western astrology and all different systems. And the numerology, of course, relates to the planetary energies. So that threefold 3 system has also arisen from the same 3 principles that we're talking about. And you can see it in India as the Aum consists of a U, and a And those 3 elements come together to form the Aum. But then the Aum is manifest. It's manifesting the Sat through the principles of Tat. So it then becomes Aum Tat Sat, right? And the Aum Tat Sat is expressed through the 3 elements of the Aum. Once again, threefold 3, an enneagram. So that is little tweet bumps. So that's little Agarth, and he wanted to be a part of this podcast too. Let him add his beautiful little music to it. Did I multiply it by accident? 2 plus 5 is 7. 7 plus 8 is 15. 1 plus 5, 6. Yes. So what I was getting at here, maybe if I said it wrong, just in the enneagram, is that you've got the 2, you've got the 5, and you've got the 8. So you add the 2 by the 8 by the 5. Then you got the 7 and the 1 and the 4. So you add the 4 and the 1 to get 5, and you add the 5 to the 7 to get 12, and that makes 3. So there's the 3, the 6, and the 9. Maybe I made a mistake earlier. I don't know. Who knows what I said? But namaste. Dear Rachel, welcome to the table. Hope you're good. So these 3 fundamental states are like what the alchemists are banging on about, and it's also why you have 3, right? Why you have the triple goddess? Why you have the Trinity? Why you have the fundaments of the outer, the inner, and that which divides the outer from the inner as a paradigm. And so these universal... Hey, you're talking to Daddy. Yes, you're talking. He's growing up. He's becoming an adolescent now. So he's becoming a big boy. He's got a lot to say. Yes. So yeah, I mean, these are the ideas that I wanted to share with regarding the specifics of the threefold state and how that sort of relates to Dreamtime from a shamanic perspective, and that Maya represents the Svadhisthana chakra, the potency and potential of cause and effect, which is a hermetic principle related to the Svadhisthana chakra, if you investigate it, with vibration, the 3rd principle of Hermes, and how the 3rd principle of Hermes interacts with the Svadhisthana chakra, Maya. And that's quite interesting, because you've got the sphere of rhythm that regulates the vibrational field, and you've got the sphere of polarity that regulates the cause and effect field. And so they fold into these four elements, these elemental states, which is why elemental magic is so fundamental to altering aspects of consciousness, because it's written into our systems. It's the way our physical bodies are formed. It's the way they operate. And so, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of interesting notions to consider when we look at the Dreamtime as being three different bodies specifically, and those three bodies can bring in information or project into three different distinct spheres of activity, and also bring information back forth. Thank you, whoever gave a like. Hey, people, please do smash a like on the like button and share this. Share it on your Facebook, your TikTok, your Twitter, your, I don't know, wherever you share things. So people can see it, or even reshare it to your YouTube, and that way people will get a sense of this potential information, because I think it's information that needs to get out there. Unfortunately, most of the people that write books about this stuff are very limited in their own experience, because, like I was saying in the beginning, they spent more time reading books than experiencing these phenomenon. And these are phenomena that you can only learn and know through actual personal experience. You need to embed yourself within the experience to grasp what it is. Then when you see the books or you hear the words, I did that, I know that. Sort of like hearing a carpenter talk about carpentry. And you're a carpenter, and he's talking about what he's doing with the wood. And it's like, oh, yeah, I've done that before. I know what you're talking about. Yeah, that makes sense. As opposed to someone who's not a carpenter hearing someone talking about making carpentry and wood. And they're like, oh, I'm sure I can figure that out if I think about it hard enough. Yeah, I think I've pretty much figured it out. That's not the same as experience. And so most of the people that have written the books are more heavy on the theory and the ideas than the experience. And this is what causes the big problem. Why we've got so much disinformation with regards to the spiritual philosophies, the occult sciences, the esoteric realities, and why we're so lost in this modern time with regards to all of this potential. And I think it's like really important for us to recognize and to realize there's something really interesting as well that I think I want to share with you guys. And I'm not sure exactly where it is, right? I'm going to take a look into my YouTube, and I'm going to try and find it here. Because if I can find it, it would be worth sharing with you guys. It's a short clip. I've done a number of these discussions, little discussions, where I actually go into looking at some of the really fundamental elements of Dreamtime and the essential nature of what I call the ancestral tree. And I relate the ancestral tree to what I call the chain of life, right? And the chain of life, I think, is something that's like not being understood. We think of ourselves as being separated. We think of ourselves as just having organs. As we don't realize how every aspect and every molecule within us is a separate universe in itself, and that all these various different universes are bound together by a secret chain, and that secret chain that binds all these universes together represent the most fundamental states of unity and unification within us, that is the essence of our beings. And so we think of free will, we think of ourselves as being administrators of free will, but actually how much of that free will is parts of us warring with other parts of us, sort of in the same way that you could imagine a group of people trying to be a democracy, right? And in the nature of this democracy, you're going to find there are going to be different people that are all going to be sort of trying to come together, trying to put things into context, and getting a bit lost in the process, because obviously there's going to be disagreements, right? Everybody's not always going to just agree on everything. And because of this, it's quite important for us to recognize this, I think. Um, and when we don't recognize this, that's when we get a bit lost. And getting lost in these elements is, I think, a bit of a problem. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and I'm going to see my son for 2 minutes or for 5 minutes. Then I'm going to come back here. I'm going to be in the chat. But while this is happening, I'm going to I want to share something. And I don't think you guys have watched it. And I hope it's the right video that I'm sharing. I think it is. It's the fractal chain of being. And I think it's really something that might be useful to people. And I'd love to get your opinions on how you guys, what you think of it, in the chat. Whether you agree with it, whether you think it's appropriate or not appropriate, or whatever your feelings are. But these are a series of videos that I made. It's part of a course, but I think it speaks quite loudly. So without any further ado, I'm going to give it the stage. And yeah, here it's going to come. So we're just going to get it so that it's full screened over here. And we're going to put it into that kind of a context. And I'm going to put myself on silent and I'm going to hit play.
This is the Bush Whisperer coming at you from the most beautiful penguin sanctuary, southern tip of Africa, Boulders Beach, Boulders Penguin Sanctuary, Cape Town. I've come to talk to you today about the chain of being. What is this chain of being of which I keep referring? Of all these beings that are the proverbial chain of being, I want you to consider for a moment, listening to those beautiful penguins, as an extension of my chain of being, the chain of being that runs through me. When you breathe, it is by the virtue of the angels. When you speak, it is by the virtue of the guides. You could use words guides, angels, they're interchangeable. When you move your limb, it is by the virtue of the chain of being. There is a huge chain, an unconscious chain, sadly, for most of us, of beings that constitute the form of our flesh. Think a moment upon the microbes in your body. How many cells have you got in your body? What? I didn't count, but I've heard it said there's about 6 trillion. I've heard it said that there's more than 10 trillion microbes living in your body. Maybe 12 trillion, maybe about 18 trillion cells in the body. Is that right? Regardless, there are many, many more microbes in your physical body than you have cells that are your own DNA, as we speak about our own DNA. And I say that in inverted commas, because that is an expression yet of the chain of being. But even the chain of being of our own DNA is existing in a body where there are more foreign cells. Consider that this is a cooperation, this body, that the organs are individual beings for a moment. This is true shamanic philosophy. It considers the organs as being beings in their own right, considers the tissues as being different forms of life, bless you. Considers the cells as all being individual living beings, bless you. It considers the nature of reality as being an expression of this fundamental multiplicity of being, which is essentially stemming from a sense of unity. What does this mean when I say these things? Well, what it means is that small things fit together to make up bigger things. And those bigger things fit together to make up yet larger things. And those larger things fit together to make, much larger things. And those much larger things fit together to make huge things. And those huge things fit together to make totally macro huge things. And those macro huge things are once again tiny things on another scale of being that fit together to make larger things, that fit together to make very much larger things. And so and so on and so on and so on goes the scale of being. And when we look at the smaller things, those smaller things are made out of yet smaller things that are made out of smaller things. And we think then of molecules, separate living little beings. And we think of atoms as inanimate objects. Are they not just a different form of life on a different scale of being? Then we look at quarks and we notice that quarks are different life forms, different beings. And we go beyond quarks and we start looking at those subatomic particles that are gluons and how the gluons fit in spheres of 6. What are the gluons made out of? We've been told they're the smallest object. Well, we were told quarks were the smallest object. But at some point, we were told atoms were the smallest. These are all life forms, but of a different order of life, of a different grade of life. For all things are an expression of life. And I would say that as you look into smaller things, you'll see smaller things make them up. And that there's this fundamental ladder of being. And this is just the physical plane. Right. Now let's look at the spiritual planes. There are certain spiritual realities that are made out of other spiritual realities, smaller spiritual realities that are fitting together. And these fit together to form yet smaller realities. And these are constructing larger realities. And so the spiritual scale, as above, so below, is following the same principles. There's this universal expansion of consciousness that is coming from the smallest part. And from the greatest part of the expanse of consciousness, the smallest part is being reflected. Why it is we can see a grain of sand within the whole universe, and why within a grain of sand the whole universe can be seen, experienced, and understood. Because the continuity of being is a chain of beings. And this chain of beings is the structure of being through which reality is seen, experienced, digested, facilitated. So we think of ourselves as being units. We are parts of something bigger. And when we look at who and what we are, there are parts of us. And when we look at those parts, there are parts of those parts. And we look into those parts, there are parts of those parts. The same can be said for the emotional reality. The emotional reality is constructed of emotions. But when we look at these emotions, they form a greater scale of emotion. And we look at that emotion, it forms a greater scale of something else. And when we look into the smaller scales of the emotions, it breaks off into little passions. And we look into those little passions break off into more manifestational thought objects relating to fantasies and such. And these break off into yet smaller objects that become more consequential. And we end up right here in this tiny little sphere of matter, the end of it all. We think of matter as being large and that the subatomic space is small. I want you to invert that. Think of it in terms of subatomic space is huge and matter is small. Matter is the contraction of subatomic space. Consider that, contraction. This universe is a contract. It's a contract between various beings in a sphere of cooperation. And we call these the heavenly choirs in Christian traditions. We call this the pantheons of being from pagan traditions. We call this the guides and the confluence of guides, and how the guides are within themselves, having guides guiding them. And within those guides, there are guides guiding those guides. And there's an infinite structure of guides through the shamanic path. Understanding that the fractal of life is truly the fractal of being, that the fractal of being is truly the fractal of the unseen, and the fractal of the unseen is a confluence of beings, all bound through this chain of causality, through this chain of existence, through this chain of being, by invisible chains of love. So love becomes the connecting facilitation that connects all things to other things, that produces the synergy of harmony in order for life to be expressed. So this is what I mean when I speak of the chain of being, this chain of consciousnesses. There are microbes, there are macrobes. There's an almost seeming infinite series of chains that are connected through this profound chain of being, that bring into being the chain of self. And so when we understand that the self is a dream, that dream is constructed of yet smaller dreams, and those smaller dreams are constructed of yet smaller dreams. And all of these tiny, tiny, tiny dreams get so small that they become the facilitation of the great dream. And the great dream is part of a greater dream, expressing yet the greater dream of reality. And this reality is a confluence. And to grasp this is to grasp the nature of the self. For the self seems to be something that it's not, seems to be a separate unit, but it's not a separate unit. The self is an expression of this chain of being. And an identity is what we start to attach to the meanings of the chain of being that we're experiencing. And we start to attach these meanings to what we're experiencing. We call this the self. Though in truth, there is selflessness. There's truly many selves operating within each aspect of yourself. And within each aspect of that self, there are many selves operating. To understand how this works, to understand the causality of consciousness, this is the domain and the path of the shaman, which is why nature becomes the guiding principle. For nature is expressing this perfect confluence of being in the way that all creatures are expressions of a greater reality. All creatures are in a state of cooperation, reflecting these divine principles, so that the physical and the mental, spiritual planes can all find a harmonic expression here through what we call reality. Like and share this if you're finding this, touching the spot. If you find this interesting, push it out there. Let the algorithms work. Hopefully this can find the right people and they can find the right inspiration from this and they can start to seek nature to find.
So there is like a so there we go. Let's just get this right again. There we go. I'm back. Big love. I got to go make sure that my son's eaten, made him a lassi. He was explaining to me how bad the vegans are. I couldn't disagree with him. He saw some YouTube of basically vegan protesters going to like harass people outside restaurants. And he was like, what's wrong with these vegan people? And I said, I don't know. They've been eating Linda McCartney's vegan soya burgers and the processed rubbish and their brains are added. So I had to agree with him. You know, there are a lot of crazy. Veganism has become like a disease, sadly, because it's a really healthy diet if you get it right. But you got to really get it right. You can't mess around with it. You know, it's like mountain climbing. If you don't know what you're doing, don't go on the mountain, right? If you haven't been properly trained to mountain climb and you don't have the correct gear, don't climb the mountain because you're going to fall off. But yeah, big love. We've got D Love. We've got D Love, and we've got Rachel Higgins. We got Rob. We've got Stein and all the other brothers and sisters here. Darlene. And we got Systematic Zoo back. He's back in the road. Welcome back, dear Toby. Toby went off. And I thought that was pretty nifty. I also managed to take a break, Toby, and go and see my boy.
Nice.
For 10 minutes while I actually had a relevant video that's very relevant to ancestors and the chain of being. By the way, what did you guys think of the video? Who of you guys saw that short little lecture, part of the 108? That's part of season 2 on the chain of life and on the fractal chain of being. What did you guys think? Did you like it? Om Namah Shivaya to everybody. I hope you guys found it fun.
What's up?
There's Toby.
I personally haven't seen that video. I think I've only seen season 1 of the videos you did. I'm just getting ready for work, so I'm gonna put my headphones in while I walk to work, and then I'll dip in and out. I'm not sure how long we're doing this live for, but yeah, just getting ready for work now, and yeah, I'll jump in and out. But if I've got my camera off, I'm still listening.
Well, big love, brother. Yeah, man. Well, I'm glad you liked it, D Love. I'm glad you did. Funny thing about that series was I woke up one day and I had to make a response to something I'd seen on YouTube. And then I realized, hold on, there's no point doing this unless I start at the beginning. So I started at the beginning, and it organically over 108 days, it evolved to become season 1, or the first lecture series of 108 videos. And then I was like, well, now I've just prepared the garden bed. Right now I need to get the seedlings, like the seeds, ready to put the seeds into the garden bed before the can start to root. And so the next season of 108 came exactly after that. So there was like a year, less than a year of filming, and I did the 216 little lectures. And then I started on season 3, which is much longer lectures. Those are 30-minute lectures. And they're not 108, and then there's 72 of those. And at some point, there's going to be a season 4. So I haven't quite finished season 3 yet. Most of it's on my Patreon for the season 3. And that's going like now that's starting to actually, that's the growth of the plant. The first one is preparing the garden bed. The next one is getting the seeds and the seedlings ready. Then season 3 is about the actual plant and the infrastructure and the growth of the D-Love. 108 lectures in one, 108 lectures in the second, and 72 in the third. And the fourth will probably be either another 72 or longer lectures. There might be longer lectures because the 30-minute lectures can take so much sign bites. Then I'm going to have to do hour-long lectures after that, or close to an hour. And then when I do hour-long lectures, it might only be 54 lectures. And that could probably be season, and then that would be season 4, and then season 5 would then likely be 90-minute lectures, and that would be 36 lectures, and then season 6 would be 120-minute lectures, and there would be probably or 2-hour lectures. No, I'm thinking 120-minute lectures, and that would be 27 of those. And then season 7 would be 2.5 hour lectures. So that's how it goes. It'll probably get to the point where there's 7 lectures. 7 3-hour lectures or 4-hour lectures. Good luck, people, if you make it through all of that. But then that will be like specific exercises really broken down into like detail. I've got to work on it. It's a work in progress. It's going to take years to build the entire infrastructure of the entire, from the beginning to the master class levels. But yeah, the whole idea of the threefold nature, and that there is this fractal potential of a universe that is connecting us. I thought you'd appreciate it, but that's just how my brain breaks everything down. And it would come back to 12, and from 12 it would be 7. And then I suppose it would have to be 3. There'd have to be 3. There'd have to be like an entire section on one of each of the 3 aspects. That would be that would be like intense, 6 days short. I am actually. I do have audio. I'm gonna capture the whole lot as just audios and put it into audio as well. It's something I've been meaning to do. Put it out there as a podcast. But the whole nature of our mythology, and the way that our mythology has been reorganized, and the way that our knowledge has been hidden from us behind this threefold system, and that our organs, we've been taught that our organs aren't independent beings. And as a shaman, this is really offensive to me. Like people don't realize that their heart have a mind of its own, and your appendix has a mind of its own. Your kidneys have a mind of its own. Your liver has a mind of its own, right? And each of these organs has its own personality. It's quite an intense thought. So like people that are angry from Chinese medicine perspective are people that allow their livers to dominate. People that are very fearful allow their kidneys to dominate. People that suffer from anxiety allow their hearts to dominate. In other words, when I say dominate, I mean not in harmony. People that are neurotic and too much thinking allow their spleens and their stomachs to dominate. And people that are too impulsive allow their genitalia to dominate. So when we look at how the systems work, these are all separate little beings that are part of a group of beings and expressing fractal states of consciousness that becomes a single unity of my body. And that's why certain foods hurt certain organs, because of the vibrations within those foods. But certain foods are good for other organs. So a food might be good for one organ but bad for another organ. And that's like quite interesting. Often.
Do you know, I find it really interesting that, because walnuts are really good for the brain and they look like little brains, and the carrots are good for the eyes, and when you cut a carrot there's an eye in the center. So it's very interesting how certain foods, how they look, relate to what they're good for. I'm not sure if you've seen the comments, by the way, but somebody's like, "Happy White History Month. You are all descended from Scottish criminals. Stop trying to be smart." So this is what the Scottish criminals' descendants are doing. They really are crawling out of the woodwork today, aren't they? But anyway, I wanted to say, in regards to different organs having their own, like their individual frequencies or whatever, was there a time when our organs were related to different gods at all?
I would imagine there was a time when there were separate beings running around on the planet.
What do you mean?
I'll use an animal as an example. Let me get a picture, because the picture is 1,000 words. Well, it's almost 1,000 words. It's not quite 1,000 words, but it's trying to be 1,000 words. So, yeah, we go. We got a beautiful one right here. We're gonna show you. We're gonna show you so we can get it to you and understand that it moves right through you, because it's not getting onto you. So we're going to share our screen. We're going to do that. We're going to turn off the volume, and we're going to go there, and we're going to go voila. So here we go. Is a classic example of a Portuguese man o' war. Voila. Now, yeah, those things sting like hell. I know, because I used to surf at a place where there used to be them. Every once in a while, I used to go to the other side to ride waves where, what's the place called? The Strand. And we got loads of them there. You get stung all over your legs and your feet and your hands, because you're wearing a wetsuit when you surf. It's Atlantic Ocean. It's cold. But I used to come out and I'd have stings all over my hands. They sting pretty hard. I mean, I've been stung by jellyfish and these things and all sorts of things over the years. But anyway, this Portuguese man of war is quite interesting, because it shows the evolution was three beings that became fused. And you can literally see that there are vestiges. So here you can see what it is that I'm getting at, right? Let me make this bigger for you so you can see it. So the Portuguese man o' war is not a single organism, but a colonial organism made up of highly specialized, genetically identical individuals called zoids. These beings do not just fuse together, they hatch from a single fertilized egg and divide into distinct parts that attach and work together to function as one living entity. I want that to sink in. I want you guys to get to grasp what we're talking about. So what that's saying effectively is that this little Oki over here, this little character here, there's three parts, right? There's the bubbly part, which is like the locomotion part. Then there's the hunting part, which are those little stingers that like basically entangles its prey with poison and then pulls it back towards itself, shrinks, shrivels up, curls up. And then there's the digesting and eating part, which is the central part within it. And underneath it, the underneath part over here. And that's where the stomach and all of that, all the equivalent is. So these are three distinct beings that distinctly hatch from three separate eggs, but they fuse together to become this. It's an incredible thought. Now, we can see that this is how evolution happens. And this is like a very old creature that hasn't like changed much because it hasn't needed to. Now, what I'm saying is that from a shamanic perspective, humans are like this. There was a time in ancient, I'm talking like, we're talking billions of years. Our physical bodies were like fused to different things that operated together. But they operated together in such a way. So here you've got a stomach, you've got limbs, and you've got navigational ability to move around. So the air bubble on the top gives it the right amount of buoyancies to float, and it gives it a little sail so that it can blow around with the wind and move around on the water. And the digestion system is what translates all of the energy, and it makes sure that every part gets food and nutrition, everything. And the stingers at the bottom, they're just hunting. They're just constantly hunting and grabbing food, like, animals. So this is three different organs that has become one conglomeration, and humans at some point was this, and that our organs were separate beings that operated together to survive, and they operated together more and more and more, and like 500,000 years later, they were like living just about on top of each other. Another 1,000,000 years later, they were like they were starting to fuse because they were so close to each other. They actually started to fuse to each other. Like if you take a plant, a cutting, and you take two different trees and you stick them to each other, and you tape them to each other, they're actually going to fuse and become a new plant, which is a crossbreed between these two plants. There's no reason why that can't happen with other kinds of beings that spend too much time close together, right? So one being, for example, might have had like a weapon that could protect. Another being could have an ability to extract nutrients. But the being that extracts nutrients on its own would be eaten by the predators. And the being that is able to protect wouldn't be able to get nutrients. And so the nutrient being, you see this in fish, in creatures under the sea, that some creatures have a close symbiosis and they live very closely together. And if conditions are pushed hard enough, they will end up being right next to each other all the time, and they would probably start to fuse. And the genetics would, over time, another 1,000,000 years, evolve into another organism that contains both of those. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. I was kind of thinking as well with in regards to gods being related to different parts of the body, like our lungs, for example. In Chinese, lung or long means dragon, and that clearly relates to the lungs in some way, and then also Hecate being relating to the liminal, like crossroads and stuff, relating to neural pathways with the brain. Like these are all kind of, there's many more as well, but these seem to signal to me, well, first off, God's being guardians of dimensions, of which there are many, and that perhaps different organs are different frequencies that help us channel into these different dimensions. And it also relates to the archetypes as well, because I just view like dragons and Hecate and all these gods as guides, but then you can also kind of associate them to parts of the body too, all part of the psyche, because our body is in our mind. It's all in the psyche, and all these different gods and all these different archetypes that are part of us, but separate from us, and that we can work with them as we work with magic and stuff like that, and be in flow and be channels for them. And some of these archetypes will speak louder, or they'll align more with our frequency than others. So some people might be more connected to dragons, more of their free deep connections. Hecate has been the guardian of pathways. It's the liminal, the space between, the crossroads, you know?
You know what I'm thinking, by the way? When you're walking, you might find it easier if you put your camera off when it starts to break up and speak closer into your phone, and you will find that your mic will, because it's AI controlled, will change its level, and the background noise will be filtered out more, and it won't break up so much when it's trying to stream video if you're in a place where there's like between different towers. I don't know if you're still with us, Toby.
Yep, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, that's much better, because you were starting to break up. I don't know if it was just my end, but it seemed like you were breaking up towards like the latter part.
I'm almost at work, so I'll be inside in a minute. It's quite windy too here. But yeah, my point was that I just view these gods as different frequencies, and with some of them you can make correlations between parts of the body, like Thor being related to lightning and electricity and expansion, and that being related to the mind and synapses of the brain, and Hecate being liminal spaces, the space in between, which is neural pathways, which is again the mind, and dragons being related to lungs as well. I can't think of any more from the top of my head. It's quite distracting walking at the same time.
Well, I mean, eagles related to the eyes, right? And you know, goats related to the skeletal system. Like, but yeah, the list does go on. You can probably also see a lot of it from the astrological, right? Lions are obviously associated with the heart. The crab is associated with the breasts, right? The bull is associated with the neck. Isn't that interesting? the thyroid and parathyroid. And the ram is associated with the head, especially the front of the head. So these are fairly old and fairly universal concepts. But yeah, you know, there's this powerful associations, and I think that those deity associations are very much real. And I would go as far as to say that at a different time, those separate beings that were outside of the physical body were ruled by particular deities. And that's why we have different deities that rule different parts of our body. Because those beings would have been native and specific to those particular beings, those deities. And I do believe that they are symbolic and that they're physically related. So possibly what it is that a deity left something behind of themselves on earth. And that's something that they left behind of themselves on earth when they were physically here incarnate as beings. That was left in the DNA spectrum of life. And it manifests as that animal. And so that animal then being integrated into a fused group of animals that became the human, then brought that deity's quality through that animal into the human body. And that's why shamanically we have these guides. That's this fractal of life comes into effect, because we then have these connections with these animalistic forms of ourselves, which are actually highly divine and are actually related to deity. And we see that very clearly outlined in the Vedic cosmology and the Vedic system as well, of all the deities, all the devas, as well as the you know, many of the beings that were sort of outcast, right? The giants and their descendants that were overthrown also left their mark here. So it's really an interesting discussion. I think it's an interesting science to look at these ancient connections between. So I would say that it's a mystical connection, it's an extra-dimensional connection, it's a mythological connection. It's also a physical connection of residual DNA of when that being was on this physical planet that became that creature. How does that settle with you? Does that make sense?
Give me 1 second. I'm just going through the door. Once I'm inside, I'll jump back on.
Well, you're probably going to have to go back to work pretty soon, I take it, and get cranking. Maybe we'll get a little while. I'll come back.
I can talk while I work. It's fine. So I can talk while I work. It's fine. I do it all the time when I'm, well, not all the time, but when I'm listening to podcasts, my mind, that's how I train my mind, is while I'm cleaning. It's like I'm doing Tai Chi for my psyche. So, you know, I'm able to chat while I work. So, yeah. But I have just forgotten what you mentioned a second ago. I was a bit distracted going through the door then. What did you just ask? Your mic's muted.
Yeah, what I was saying was that these deities exist on another plane of consciousness, another plane of existence.
Right.
They're also symbolic, they're also metaphorical, but they also are in the animals that were vestiges of the DNA of the deities when they were on the planet, that encompassed itself to become those animals as expressions of those deities. So they are like on every dimensional aspect, the physical, the mental, and the spiritual, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. Yeah. So with the etymology of the of deity as well, you have die, and then you have itty. And the itty, I always say the itty, nitty, bitty, gritty, doesn't matter. It's the bit before that, which is the day, which is the die, which is the transformation or the changing or the emerging, like a butterfly emerging from a chrysalis. In Chinese, butterfly means die. And it seems that's what we're here to do. We're here to die. And some people might be like, well, yeah, that's the curse of life, is to die. Why would God create us here if we're made to die? Well, the word's been inverted, and we're just here to change. Like, we're here to transform, to grow. Be that grow outwards, grow inwards. It's transformation. So these deities, I always say that gods are guides, or like guardians of dimensions. And these dimensions is the psyche. All dimensions is the psyche, like the all mind. And by looking into the teachings of these gods or people's stories of these gods, the archetypes, the story arc of these guides, then we can understand ourselves and the world around us, which is not just here, the physical realm, but realms beyond, inner realms and outer realms. And another example is Ganesh being an elephant, and then that being related to the brain, I guess. I'm pretty sure Ganesh relates to the mind, and it's to do with like overcoming obstacles. And when people are like, oh, there's an elephant in the room, that means like there's an obstacle in the room, there's something there. But yeah, I've forgotten what I was going to say, because I was about to say something just before I started walking through the door. And I think perhaps I've come from outside to inside. I could go out and retrace my steps. That usually works, but I'm not going to do that. I'll see if it comes back to me, and I'll let you know.
Yeah, I mean the aspects of the mental power is definitely related to Ganesha for sure. And that's why Ganesha is the scribe of the heavens, and carries the information, carries the knowledge of the deities into physical manifestation. And he actually breaks off his tusk to use as a writing implement. He's also the god of the boundaries. That's interesting. We're talking about knowledge here. When Parvati wants to take a shower, Nishnan Kilya, then Shiva wants to come and hang out with her when she's having a wash, because Parvati looks pretty good when she's got her kit off. Then Ganesha was left there by her to protect her, to make allow no one to pass to go and see her. And Shiva was like, who do you think you are? I'm Shiva. I want to see that woman with her kit off. And he gives him like a backhand, removes his head. And that's how he got the animal head. So he literally got the animal head because he lost his head because he was maintaining the boundaries, which is quite interesting. And those boundaries are what lock us out from the potential to manifest. So the boundaries are the things that we remove when the boundaries between ourselves and the energetic potentials within our consciousness field. So it's definitely a very, very interesting connection there with the mind and the 5 gunas, those aspects of mental potential and power. And you could think of Ganesha as sort of the deity of wisdom in a way, if you really get right down to it. There's a closeness with Sarasvati. And Sarasvati is very much to do with wisdom. The feminine potential, which is obviously, Ganesha is the active expression. Sarasvati is the inner maintaining that potential on an inner level. So yeah, I'm noticing we've been going for like 2 hours and 39 minutes, which is like longer than we planned to. I thought maybe there's a few things you wanted to say. If there's stuff on your mind, do you want to
Yeah.
unwind?
Yeah, I'll try and unravel what's in my mind. So I just find it really interesting, the sort of connection of chaos and order, and obstacles and boundaries, that, because like we have structure, which I'm hesitant to relate to order, because we have structured water, and then our etheric bodies related to structure too. But I just find this this relationship between chaos and order very, very interesting, because like the chaos is like the course of where something's come from, and then the order is like the ore and the door. It's like the movement of the chaos through the door. But how I relate this to, like, to gods and dimensions and us and the psyche, is that with dormant potential or dormant energies, that's door and ment, that's doorways, portals of the mind, that's dormant potential that we all have. And I think that, like, my process of learning about all this stuff is that we can't tap into the all mind, otherwise we can't tap into it straight away. Maybe as children we observe it, but I think that's how people get like psychosis, or like what's called like mental illnesses and stuff, is they're tapped into too much, but they have no guidance or no order. It's just chaos. They don't have doorways because the doorways are closed. And with like tapping into these gods, guardians of dimensions, opening these doorways, and observing or acknowledging and letting the chaos flow, and understanding the course of where these archetypes come from in relation to us, in relation to the psi stem, where this stems from in relation to our psyche, like the essence of what these gods are, these guides, that they can open doorways for us, and we here in this realm can channel this energy through these doorways. And I think that's what we are here for, and this is why we've been detached from gods, lots of them demonized, in place of the one true God who's up in the heaven, who will send you to hell if you're bad. And now it being replaced with AI and the artificial, is that you've got to work. You've got to, like, you can't just exercise your body. You've got to exercise your psyche as well. You've got to like exercise your mind and like be in flow. And that when you are in flow and have movement and have discussions like this, listen to discussions, open up your mind, you can hear things, that you can get keys which unlock doorways. And some of these keys come from hearing information, or like these gods are like, oh, what's Ganesha about? What's Hecate about? What's Thor about? Odin, what's their story? And we have this deep connection to their story, because their story and our story is entwined. Because these timelines seem to all be connecting now. The threads, the weaving of the three fates of the past, the present, and future are entwined now, and we're the ones that can bring these gods into existence once again, and that these gods, guardians of dimensions, can help us channel. And what's so there's a really high-pitched noise in the background. The reason why I'm saying this is that these gods are guides, and they can help guide us and help channel us on our journey, because where we are now, this is just like a midpoint. It's like known as Midgard or whatever, and that we can channel energy in and move energy. by working with these gods and knowing that they're not external from us. We're connected to them. They come through us as archetypes, and these archetypes are stories, and stories are a store of energy. And when we tap into and connect to these gods, we can, it gives us power, it gives us energy. Whereas what's happening now, especially with AI and stuff, is that people feel powerless and there's an energy crisis, and they're giving their power away to a false digital entity. So I think that that now people more than ever need to start reconnecting to their ancestors, to their guides, to the power of their toridic field, to the power that dwells inside all of us. And we navigate that by understanding these stories of this mythologies, which we're told myth means not real, but myth is the most real thing there is. And I'll use Lord of the Rings as an example. For anyone who's seen that, Frodo has his mithril vest on, which is really, really light, as light as a feather. The mithril is the myth wheel. If we understand the myth wheel and our place in the universe and these archetypes, that this is armor for us against trolls. And people will troll us and try to attack you, but they won't be able to pierce your armor. And the armor in French, amour, means love. So our armor is love. And when we understand the mythology and we start tapping into that, we'll have that frequency of love, and that can't be pierced by these people trolling online or whatever. So yeah, I'll finish up with that today.
I like that. The armor that keeps the trolls away. Make your myth real. Wear it as armor. It sounds like a cool advert, like make your myth real. Wear it as armor. Myth real. You know? Myth real armor. And it's like a workshop to teach the myth real armor workshop. Keep those trolls at bay.
Also,
beautiful, man. Yeah.
I just have to say as well that the myth real is the myth real, and that it reminds me of the ether or the ethereal. My ether real is a mithril. So when you tap into that, my ether is real, and the ether, guess what, is around us, and that is our protective armor that these vampires want to sink their teeth into. So mithril, myth is real, my ether is real. It's all the same, and it's layered. You have the myth of like these archetypes inside us. You have the myth wheel, which I guess is like outside us, like astrology, the cycles of time. And then you have my ether is real, which is around us as well. The toroidal inside us, the toroidal around us, the toroidal around the earth. And that is this three-layered structure, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. and you know, you were mentioning before that the deities and the gods, they work through us. And once again, when we apply the threefold system, right? Yes, the deities exist in a parallel state of hyperdimensionality as actual intelligences. And yes, they work through us because we are them, because they are us. And why are we them? Because each of the deities has left behind some of its own physical essence on the earth when it went back into hyperdimensionality, and that became animal forms, and we carry those animal form DNAs within our bodies. And so our very ancestral lineage is connected to those animal forms, is connected back to those DNA forms. So when we read the story of, for example, the Anunnaki, right? How the beings came down to earth and how they changed us and mixed us with their own DNA, how they created us and how they put some of their own essence into us. This This didn't happen in a day or a week or a month or 1,000 years or even 10,000 years. It happened over many, a long period of time. And so there's an element of realism to it, right? The very deities. So people say, oh, well, you shouldn't invoke Ea because Ea was an actual being that walked the earth. Yes. But then when you're invoking Ea, Ea is also a deity. Yes. So how does that come together? Well, the Ea that existed on the physical plane had some incredible powers and abilities. And those powers and those abilities live on through the DNA that Ea has left on this earth plane, that got manifested through certain animal bloodlines and animal lines, but is also part of the human DNA genome and has become fully integrated into the human system. So we have our ancestors that are closer to that Ea that we can connect with to draw more of that Ea essence into ourselves, those supernatural abilities and powers. But we also have the very DNA of that Ea, and through harmonic resonance, by attuning to that DNA within us, that ancestral DNA, which we call the junk DNA, which isn't junk, we're able to activate those potentials within the human condition and tap into those very ancient powers, those very ancient abilities, which have been lost to us. And so, yes, humans were affected somehow by the beings that interfered with our development, but in the process of interfering with our development, they left some of their natural essences mingled with ours. And so there's good and bad that came with those essences. But part of those essences brings powers. And of those powers, there are supernatural powers as well. So it's like, I would say, like, they work through us because they are us, because we are them in an essence, like a fractal essence.
Well, I just want to throw out there, because the example that Anunnaki came here to mine our gold, not give us gold, that is a real possibility, that they gave us extra coding or whatever. But it seems to me that could they have come here and messed with our DNA and in a malevolent way, not in a beneficial way. And I know that there were some good, some bad, but it seems that telomere caps were put on the end, or caps were put on the end of our telomeres. Our life expectancy has gone down. The gold isn't just gold. The gold was our spark or our louche, which is still being harvested now, except it's harder to fight these beings because they're not physical, they're metaphysical. They use their legions of parasites called the elites, but I'm more inclined to think that we had so much potential, humanity here, and that there are beings which came here from space or interdimensionally. They messed with us, and I don't think it was in a beneficial way. Like, there's the story of Enki giving us DNA and stuff, and I don't know how I feel about that. I don't know whether it's this or that. I'm more inclined to see that it was more of a messing up what was already good, what was already of the earth. So yeah, I'm not really too sure how I feel about that.
I think they came with selfish intentions. Let me give you an example. Western country goes to Africa with the intention to take their resources, right? But in the process, the African people get technology, they get they learn to read and write, they get clean water, they get stuff that they were struggling with before, maybe because the population was growing. They get a benefit off of a corporation invading their place to take over their country. And when that corporation goes, they've still got the good that they got out of the deal, and they can slowly work off the negative. So I think you're right, and I agree. Like there was definitely a meddling, and oh, by the way, gold. I want to throw this out there. You might like this. You know that your body probably has about, at least, your body has more than 0.2 milligrams of gold in it. Did you know that?
What type of gold?
Gold
Like
from the periodic table?
Monatomic. Is monatomic gold different to that? Because I'm sure that the gold they came to mine wasn't from us. It wasn't gold. It was monatomic gold.
No. I think that they were mining real gold and maybe turning it into monatomic gold, processing it. But I'm just showing how the multidimensional fractal works in reality. That even within our human body, when loosh is being mined from our bodies, we actually have gold in our bodies. So that loosh is related to a vibrational frequency, which is actually in our bodies, which is actually gold. It's an interesting concept, right?
Yeah. And also the sun is another name for the sun is soul. And the metal linked with the sun or soul is gold. So those three are interchangeable. So really what the extraction of gold from us is an extraction of our soul. And this relates to Ahriman and our extraction of our identity, which is our soul. That's what makes us different to everybody else, is our soul. And this is what the hive mind, the singularity, this Ahrimanic energy is. So it's like this may have happened in the past, the mining the gold. Perhaps that was just on Earth, like from the Earth. But now it's more of metaphysical gold, which is mining and trying to extract our soul. And this is why now there's so much happening with DNA. Maybe it happened in the past, but we don't necessarily know that. What we do know is that there are places, especially in Africa, where there was a lot of gold extracted. And maybe it was DNA at the time then as well. But is there so much gold being extracted from the earth now? I'm not sure if there is, but now it seems to be more metaphysical. It seems to be from us, from our body, be that our divine spark, our soul. You know, it is interesting when you follow the etymology, like I said, with the sun being soul, and we have souls, and that's our spark, and the sun being like a plasma. We have plasma inside us, our life force, and then we have now this emergence of AI and the artificial, and this Ahriman and this cult-like collective hive mind. I find that very interesting.
You know, that's very interesting. And I think they are connected. I think like what we see as gold on the physical plane is something else on the fractal energetic plane. But it just happens to manifest as physical gold. But I think that the fact that they came out to mine physical gold from our planet means that they were taking something energetic as well. Because like you can't do one thing without doing another thing, if that makes sense. You can't, if you're dealing with a fractal system and you take one thing out of that fractal system, you're actually effectively taking other things out of that fractal system too and moving them around. So in that sense, it makes sense that they would have been, in order for them to be able to mine our physical gold, they had to mine our energetic loosh. And even though now they're not mining the physical gold, they are mining the energetic loosh, but they have us mining the energetic gold on their behalf. Right? Like, it's an interesting concept. So when we look at like gold, right? So there are 216,000 metric tons of gold. Isn't that interesting? Hey? On Earth, 216,000 metric tons. And if we say Graham, there are 1,600 metric tons of gold in the human population. Yeah? How's that? If you were to take all the people and like extract the gold from all of the human bodies, you'd have like 1,600 metric tons. It's a lot of gold. Like the human race is like we're a golden race. It's a funny thought, like you think about it. But so I think that there must be a correlation and a relation between those numbers somehow, a ratio, yeah, which is quite interesting, because and don't you find it interesting? I wonder where the number 216,000 comes from. Why 216? Because that's a powerful number. Maybe I can get a share this tab instead.
Why is it powerful?
From the Masonic traditions. Oh,
I've never heard
damn.
it.
Well, 216 is a number that is quite important within the Masonic tradition. It's also a number of the which prime number is it? I'm sure it's a prime number. Must be. Because these guys are always pretty obsessed with these. Sorry, it's a composite number. So it's only got two factors, 1 and itself. And it's a perfect cube. So it's got 16 different factors. Isn't that interesting? It's a perfect cube that's got 16 different factors in it. And it's divisible by several numbers: 2, 3, 4, 6, 8, 9, 12, 18, 24, 27, 36, 54, 72, 108, 216. Are you looking at those numbers? 216, that's 2 cycles of 108. It's also divisible into the 72 quinets, the 54, there are 54 letters in the Sanskrit alphabet, the 36 deacons of astrology, the 27, which is 1/4 of the cycle of a rosary, which is 108, or a half a cycle of the Christian rosary. 24 is the polarized expression of the number 12, quite important. There are 24 hours in a day. The 18, well, 18 is rather fundamental. 18 is 3 cycles of 6, or 6 cycles of 3. 18 is fundamental to our understanding of the enneagram and how it relates to us. Then the 12, as we know, the 9, which is the enneagram, the 8 of Saturn, 6, which is the hexagram, 4, which is the square, 3, which is the Trinity, and 2, which is the Yang and the Yin. You see all these numbers, and there's one, and there happens to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So the 15th number, right? I hope you guys are seeing this. Yeah, you guys are seeing this. Good. It's not on the screen. So what do we see when we see the 15th number? Let's break this down, ladies and gentlemen. You guys gave me a second wind. Dang. So the 15th number is very important and relevant because of, and give me 1 second and I will pull it up into our images here. And voila, bing. There it comes. Give me a second while we wait for StreamYard to bring it to the screen. And there it is. So once again, here we go. So the number 15, right?
Sorry,
8 plus
Frankie,
1.
are you supposed to be sharing something?
Yeah, I am.
There's nothing on the screen that I can see.
Can you people see it? And our tuition, namaste, our tuition, D-Love, everybody in the chat. Can you see what I'm sharing on the screen? Yeah, because I can see it in my StreamYard. I hope you guys can see it. Anybody in the chat? Okay, everybody in the chat. On the count of 3. Can you see the Saturn square that I'm sharing on the screen? I'm wondering if it's your device, because you had this happen before.
Yeah,
Yeah,
maybe,
yeah,
but I did see what you were a minute ago. It might be my device though. Oh, yeah, it's
Because-
fine. You can see it. Never mind.
Yeah. So it's the Saturn square there, and the Saturn square is, as we know, it adds up to 15. Any way you take it, it's 1 plus 5 plus 9 is 15. 3 plus 5 plus 7, 15. 8 plus 5 plus 2, 15. 6 plus 5 plus 4, 15. Whether you take it left, vertically, diagonally, horizontally, it adds up to 15. And so when we come back to this numbers here, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So there are 15 factors. There's 15 elements within that number 216. I think this is why it's so fundamentally important. Why? And I'm just touching the surface here, because I do think that there are probably going to be a lot of other elements if we really sit and investigate this number that will come up. So here we can see the Masonic explanations here. So the hidden name of God, right, breaks down to 216, which is 3 times 72, right? And that's the 72 letter name of God. The magic cube, which is 6 times 6 times 6. Yeah. So you can see why they hold that number in high regard. But I think the things that they're telling you here are simplistic. I think that when we start looking at this particular one, we're going to see so much more here. And look here. 2 to the 3 times 3 to the 3. Isn't that interesting? If you take 2 cubed and multiply it by 3 cubed, you end up with 216, right? And then there's the 6 times 6 times 6, which we know. And so it's also the double scale of 108. So there's just so much about this number 216 that we can digest and never really see the end of. But so anyway, that's something to consider when we're looking at all of this. But getting it back to what we were talking about here, it all seems to align. It all seems to fit together rather neatly, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I can't really remember why why you brought up those numbers in the first place. What did it relate to? The 216? What was the original thread? Your mic's muted, by the way.
I only had about 4.5
You're
hours
muted.
sleep last night, and I haven't had my siesta yet today, because I was working really in the night with my US clients. When my clients need me, then I do a night shift, and then I work at night. So, and it's pretty intense work, energetic work. So it then leaves me quite. I need to sleep to invigorate the physical body. But the fundaments of how did we get to the number 216? It came out in the oh yes, it came out here in the gold. Yeah.
Is it the
approximately
gold?
216,000 metric tons of gold have been mined and processed globally in modern history. So they are saying that we have 216 million metric tons of gold in circulation. Don't you find that interesting? Yeah? That number would be the amount
Yeah,
of gold
kind
there
of.
is.
I mean, I can't really wrap my head around it, to be honest with you.
But just the number 216 is like probably one of the most important numbers in Masonic knowledge. I mean,
I'm
it's
just trying to.
in all occults knowledge, 216 is fundamental. It's also the enneagram. It's how the 1 and the 2 get together to make the 3, and then the 1 plus the 2 plus the 3 add up to 6. 216. Does that make sense to you? And then when you add up the 2, the 1, and the 6, you end up at the enneagram. Right? And when you add up the 2, the 1, and the 6, which is the enneagram, right? You end up at the 18. And when you add 18 plus 2 plus 1 plus 6, you end up at 27. And when you add 27 plus 2.2 and 1 and 6, you end up at 36. So it's just really interesting how these numbers compound, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I'm sure that
you add 2 cycles of it to get to 54. Yeah, brother, fire away.
My internet connection's not great. I was trying to find if 216 is on the gold periodic table, because I'm pretty sure I remember 216 being on there. It's like AG, but I swear the number was 216. It'd be interesting if it is, if you're able to check, because I can't for some reason.
Are we talking about gold?
Number being to do with gold. Yeah, on the periodic table, like when you get the information up, pretty sure I remember 216 being on there.
I think you're right. Is it gold or is it which one is it? Let's take a look and see. It's not gold. It's another one. What element has atomic weight of 216? What element has atomic weight of 216? I think we're talking about atomic weight. Polonium. So what is polonium? What is polonium used for? I don't even know polonium. It's very interesting. It's probably something worth looking up. There's probably quite a lot of knowledge we're going to discover by looking up the polonium. What is polonium used for? So it's highly radioactive and a rare element. Its practical application leverage is intense radioactivity to generate heat and alpha particles. Common uses include static illuminators, used in specialized brushes to safely neutralize static electricity from industrial processes like paper rolling and plastic manufacturing, space exploration. It produces a lot of heat. So it produces intense thermal power and neutron sources. When alloyed with elements like beryllium, it emits neutrons, which are useful for basic reactors starting up nuclear reactors. Wow. Okay. Isn't that interesting, huh?
Well,
So it has got,
yes, Stein's
yeah.
said radium is 216 as well. That's interesting. Are you seeing the chat, Franklin? You're muted.
Ah, yes, sorry. Namaste, Carly. How are you? Charlie, sorry, I call you Charlie. I don't know why I called you Charlie. But Carly, you're talking about the chart. You're talking about that's the Saturn square and the Saturn sigil. I'm going to do a full breakdown focusing on that, maybe as a shorter video at some point soon. For people, I keep bringing it up in all the round tables. It's got so much importance. Radium is a silvery white, highly radioactive material element within chemical symbol. The 47 elusive problem, height 216. Oh, wow. Thank you for that, Chelsberg, the 47 Euclid problem. Yeah, I've seen this in those number triangles. That's where I've seen it. Thank you for reminding me. There are all these Euclidean, these different triangles of numbers that like everybody from Plato to everybody else used. Pythagoras was big on it as well. And this 216 always comes up as like that fundamental baseline number. But it's definitely it's not specifically radium. It is where did I get the information? Polonium. So let's get polonium and go for the polonium. Let's take a look at it. Polonium on the elemental table. Let's see what we get. Because there's something very interesting about this material that we just want to sort of soak it up, don't we? There we go. That's a better version, more clear. So it's a octahedron. Sorry, octahedron. Hexagonal crystal structure. I thought it was 216. So polonium isn't 216. So how did we get it? How did we get onto polonium? How did polonium find its way here? That's very, very strange. 216 atomic mass. Polonium 216. Okay, so you get polonium 216. Okay, that's why. Don't they love making it complicated, huh? Don't they absolutely just love it? Why make it simple? Periodic table. So polonium has a way to associate with these numbers. Isn't that interesting? Because polonium itself is 209, but it can be 216. I find that fascinating because 209 is snake eyes. That's double 11. Atomic number 84, which is 12, which is just find the way these numbers are working out quite interesting. But anyway, regardless, I think it's time to wrap it up. We've been going for over 3 hours.
Sorry, Hound.
Yes, brother?
Did you say 209 is Snake Eyes?
Yeah, 209 is Snake Eyes because
Why is
it breaks
209
down-
Snake Eyes?
because the 2 and the 9 break down to 11. And the 11 is Snake Eyes. That's numerologically it breaks down to 11. You don't take it down to 2, you keep it as 11 because it's a master number. And 11, it literally looks like Snake Eyes, doesn't it? The 2 ones. I'm sure that 11's always been called Snake Eyes, hasn't it?
Interesting. My internet's not great. I'm not sure if I'm still here, but your thing's loading.
So here's the thing where the Snake Eyes thing comes from. Yeah. I hope you can hear this.
Can anybody hear or see me in the chat at all?
Yes, you're there. You're very differently there. You're there. Your camera's off, but we can see you. Your thing is there. Maybe your camera's off because of your internet. But yeah, everybody, it's definitely time for me to go. I've got to roll. I've got to get my self ready for. I've got to work. I've got my son. I've got a whole list of things. Yeah, it's interesting because there is such a thing as the polonium 216, which to me it's a bit mind blowing. They obviously have ways of adding certain charge to it. It makes me think of monatomic gold because monatomic gold can change things, right? The gravitational effects, mass, all sorts of elements can be changed by monatomic gold. So this polonium seems like a really interesting nuclear substance. It seems like it's one of the most potent ones.
You can hear and see me. I can't hear or see Franklin. His thing.
I think it's your internet. I think it's your internet that's an issue. Maybe if I put my camera off, then you'll be able to hear my voice better because it'll be easier for your internet to download me. Am I right? Toby, you can hear me better now, right? Or is the stream still 1080p? I'm not quite sure how these technical things work. Regardless, I'm going to say to everybody, it's almost going 3.5 hours. It was not supposed to happen. A quick 1.5 hour podcast turns into 3.5 hours. What can we say? We love hanging with you people. You guys are amazing. I hope you enjoyed this little discussion and this couple of shares. Welcome, dear Tara and Carly. And big love to all of you peeps there. And I hope you guys, and Chelsea X Bug, not quite sure how to say that. Sending you all much love, blessings, peace, honor, out tuition. Take it easy, everybody. Keep the smile alive. And we shall be back probably on Friday. Probably be back on Friday. Definitely be back on Saturday at the same time as always. And I hope you guys enjoyed the little discussion today. Got what you came for. Sending you all big love, peace, honor, respect. Om Namah Shivaya. Take it easy. Keep smiling. And don't forget, life is short. Big love.